Good morning, everyone. It is a Saturday, October 26th, 2024. Good old 710 KNUS and our weather. And I rode my motorcycle into work this morning, and this may be the last Saturday morning I ride in. It was waytime cold. 75 the high today and 45 tonight. 80 we can still ride tomorrow, and 82 on Monday. Halloween tricks and treats. And it's going to be cold the next day. It rains, and it's pretty typical stuff, but the weather holds, so all is well. I'm Peter Boyles. Good morning, everyone. Phone number 303-696-1971. And we're going back, Marty. We're going back. And I want to do this quickly, and then we'll move to some other issues. For Halloween, I was trying to remember last night, actually, how many years, more than one, in about 20 years, I think, we spent the night before Halloween in a haunted house. And it started with one of my harebrained schemes. And so Darrell Luebbe and Kenny Dhainin, who are two of the very best I've ever worked with, were always in on it. But Scott Hastings, the legend, Scotty joined us. And Scott's going to join us here in about 25 minutes. He's got a Nuggets game tonight. As you know, he's one of the voices of the Nuggets. He was originally going to be here in studio with us this morning, and then he thought he had an evening game, but he has an afternoon game, so Scotty will be joining us by phone. The other thing I really want to plug is what's going to happen election night. I just spoke with Caldera about it, but I've never either been offered or asked to host election night. And the bosses said, sure, go ahead. And I came up with this scheme about turning down your television, or rather turning on your television, turning down the sound, turn on the radio station, 710 KNUS. You can call in during all of this. And along with us will be Mike Rose. And I had a really good talk with Mike the other day. Mike will join us, Ted Trimba, Patty Calhoun, hopefully Dr. June Depp. He's coming back into the country. Brother Jeff, Deborah Flora. I had a good conversation with her husband, Jonathan, Jeff and Billy, Caldera, and so many more. But your calls and the inputs, it's going to be a great night. And as I said, nobody will go home early. We had a guy who waits to want to talk. Why don't we do that? And then I do want to talk about the conversations about Hitler's generals. And as a World War II buff, there were 6 assassination attempts on Hitler's life, and his generals were part of 3 of them. And I called Billy. I was on my way to the gym. I forget what morning it was, Wednesday or Thursday. And I said, you guys forget, his own generals tried to kill him. So we can talk about that for a moment. But Dustin was waiting, so it's only fair to do it. Hey, Dustin, hi, man. You're on the show. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, Uncle Pete. I can't wait to turn off the volume and turn you guys on and listen to you call the game like Logan does for the Broncos. It's going to be fascinating.
Yeah.
Something's stewing in my head all week, and I had to pop this question to you before you go Halloween on the show, and that's going to be a good one. It's a hypothetical about Trump. Had he got greased over there at Butler or at the golf course or whatever, I mean, since Kamala came in through the bathroom window for the Dems, had Trump got greased, who would be there right now? And would we even have a competition?
You know, I had that conversation about who would take his place. And I don't know if they would start all over again or it would go to Vance. One of the things about Harris is Harris never faced never went through primaries. And she got, and I'll say, anointed. And I personally believe, and we may never, I'm sure someday we'll know, but I think there was a palace coup. And much like with Richard Nixon, when they finally went down and said, and it was Barry Goldwater and Hugh Scott and all these very powerful Republicans, they went in and said, look, Dick, it's time. And I do think that happened. Now, whether or not he agreed with it, Nixon had no option but to resign. Biden, I don't know if he fought against him, fought back against him, but he had to go. And
when the kids come to you and tell you, okay, Pops, throw me the keys, you're all done driving. I mean, you're done.
Yeah, no, it's well said. That's a really good analysis. But I I don't know. Would it fall to Vance? And because remember, he hadn't chose Vance yet. He was still pre the convention. He had won. He'd run the board. He won the primaries, but he had not gone to the convention yet, and they did not trot Vance out yet. So,
well, I'm exo de facto as DeSantis appear. You come in through the bathroom window, just like I said, Kamala did to steal some bumper music from the previous show.
I mean, I think one of the things that has thrown the Trump people off is they were set up to knock, and they would have knocked Joe Biden out of the box, and they didn't see her, and then suddenly she appears, and they have to readjust everything.
I just wonder if it would be so neck and neck if there's so many people that say never Trump or I can't do Trump, but I choke on Kamala. If Trump was out of the picture because of an assassination attempt, who would have been there, and would we even have a race right now?
That's great. I really don't know. I suspect, well, because remember the convention, he shows up at the convention with a patched ear. You know, he still had the patch on his ear, and he brings Vance out. The other one is, and I do believe this, where the vice president chooses sort of a reincarnation of Dan Quayle. I mean, what does this guy bring to the dance? Nothing. But I think Shapiro in Pennsylvania. Shapiro would have been the choice. He's beloved in Pennsylvania. I was just at a reunion there, and he would have brought in, I think it's 19 votes. I think PA, but she would have had a very strong vice president who very easily could have overpowered her. And so she chooses the modern day version of Dan Quayle. And I think that was the wrong choice. But we're short timing now.
Well, I'm going to go rip around on a Dynaglide all weekend before we got to put it away. Let me leave you with the...
Yeah. I mean, I rode in this morning about 6:45, and it was like ski season. It was cold. But I'm going out. It'll be when we leave the job, it'll be warm, and I can get on the bike and go. But it's cold out there.
Right up to Greeley, see my grandson tomorrow. It's going to be a good day.
Yes, it is.
Let me leave you with this. Hey, Tom, tell Mike it was just business, huh?
Yeah, I'll tell Mike. Remember they said no can do, Tess. Remember, and he always said Tessio was always smarter. You know, and the old man knew whoever approaches you is the traitor. I still
have a good show, Pete.
I love you, man. Thanks. One more, and then I'm going to switch over. Hey, Marcus, you're on the show. Good morning. It's Saturday.
Good morning, Peter. I think that's great that you're going to do that on the radio. I listened to Billy and Jeff when they did the Trump rally because I didn't have cable.
Huh?
It was so good. So I'm going to try this. This is going to be, it comes back. My grandfather said they didn't have TV. They listened to the elections and promos and everything on the radio. So I'm going to check this out.
And it was the big night. And it was during a time when you think about Argentina. No, I was reading this the night before last. Argentina counted in one night. Hong Kong counted in 6 hours before the problems with the PRC. But we're going to be a while. But I think locally for, reps and amendments and, that stuff, I think we'll know. But the way I'm kind of planning this out is Mike has another thing that he's doing, but he will join us 3 or 4 times that night by cell phone. Everybody's got a cell phone. By phone. Ted will be in here. Patricia Calhoun may or may not be in the studio. Whether or not Dr. June Depp's back. Brother Jeff will join by phone. Deborah Flora, I don't know how she's going to be part of the show. Jeff and Billy, Caldera. And I think, but principally, it will be driven by folks like you that will call the show. And
I can't wait, Peter.
Yeah.
I mean, this is good. First time you did this too. I just think it's great.
Never done it. And it's funny. I was talking to somebody about it, and I said, I really, the idea is to steal from how Dave Logan does the Bronco show. Like turn your television down, turn up Dave. And this whole time, how many times have you watched returns on, I don't care what channel it is, and the anchors are afraid to be political, which nobody's going to be afraid not to be political that night here. And then all of a sudden they go to Democrat headquarters or wherever they go, and there's always generally a lovely young news news reporter. They have what's called a stick mic, and they're interviewing some guy that's half in the bag, and some band's playing in the background, and somebody's given the party line. And you think, God, it's like watching paint dry. And so we're gonna try this, and if it works, we'll try it again. But I love all these people that, and a couple of people. Dean Singleton could not, which I would have had Dean with us, but he could not. Mm-hmm. I'm just up for it. I mean, we'll come in and work about 6, and I don't know what time we go home. So,
well, it might be all night.
Yeah. And I like I said, we were at lunch yesterday, and Jeff Hunt sat next to me at lunch, and I said, you and Billy ought to gear up and come in about 4 a.m. Nobody's going to know. I mean, if anybody thinks, and if you got Georgia, Pennsylvania, you know the drill. I mean, the states that nobody's going to be able to predict right away. And if they do, Katie, bar the door. No, I'm serious.
That's so true.
Oh, it's all true.
That is true. Yeah. It's rigged.
It's going to start anyhow. But we'll know like Lauren Boebert. We'll know those kinds of races, and some of the amendments. We'll know the amendments. And
that's more. Yeah, our state's more important on that. So.
Yes, absolutely.
But I think it's just great, Peter. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, you're kind. Thank you.
I can't wait.
I can't either. And I'm working on.
I'm serious.
I'm building. They call them clocks in our business. I'm building a clock on who fits where, and Ted, who's been back and forth to New York, and he's going to come in and he's going to sit with me, hopefully the night. And Patricia, I think Patricia may come in a studio. Mike is hosting his own, they call them watch parties. And then he'll break from his own party. And Brother Jeff has a party, and he'll break from it. Yeah. And I had a great conversation with Deborah Flora's husband, Jonathan Flora. Just, you can't ask for a better guy. He worked in professional wrestling. And I love the guy. He's just a great guy. And Deborah will be with us. And like I said, Jeff and Billy Caldera. And I'm going to add some people too. I'm going to see if there's a people, like I'm going to approach Dan Kaplis and see if he'll jump across. He
might.
And you know what? He might. And Dan's that kind of a guy. And I'll say, Danny, would you join us? Just give us a drop. And I think he probably will. I mean, this is like Switzerland that night. Nobody, like Vegas, nobody in the mob runs it, so remember in Vegas is like,
this is going to be cool.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And the station's talking about getting it catered. And I went, hey, I'm going to have my grandson come over and see a little bit of it. So he can, so he can say, hey, I watched the old man, pull the trick, and we'll see.
Someday you say, I was there when he started it.
Yeah, but who was that guy again? But it's really cool. So I'm up for it. It comes from the bottom of my top 40 heart, and we'll see what happens. Take care.
Oh, it's going to be great.
It's going to be real good. Bye. You too. One more, and then I'm going to switch some things over. This is Jack. Hey, Jack, you're on the show. Good morning.
Yeah, Pete, I mean, I've long known Mike Rosen. Is this going to be available on the internet? Because nobody in our family has owned a TV in years.
Yeah, it will be. It's going to stream on YouTube. It'll be on Rumble. It'll be on radio.
On YouTube. Okay.
What we're doing right now. Yes.
Okay. One other quick thing.
And the podcast. Yes.
I hear you knocking Dan Quayle. I hope you're aware that Dan Quayle was was Mike Pence's legal advisor. So maybe you better not do that.
Well, let me tell you something. He wrote.
That's good.
He wrote a book. Quayle wrote a book, and he came to town, and he spent a couple hours with me in the studio at KHOW. I had read the book. I'd read the book. And,
I know you read.
And we had the best conversation. He was not as advertised. He certainly wasn't stupid. And,
Potato.
And yeah, the potato thing. That's right. But we sat and then he said, well, what do you think of my book? And there were some parts of the book that I thought, hey, you shouldn't have done that. But Dan Quayle actually, and we ended up talking about skiing is what we talked about. He's a Vail skier. His father had a wallet. His father owned a newspaper, if I remember correctly. And he wasn't a fool. He just got they picked him. If you read the history of, and this is Herbert Walker Bush, because they thought young women would vote for him because he was handsome. You missed it by a mile.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's one of the reasons. Well,
so you're telling me he's not who I think he is. Okay. The biggest enigma of our time has got to be Robert F. Kennedy Jr. That's got to be the biggest enigma with respect to something being antithetical to what you would expect it to be politically.
But here's what I think about him. His uncle was murdered. His father was murdered.
Yeah.
You don't shake that.
No.
And I watch him, and he's been through these divorces and all this intrigue, and being a Kennedy, you think about the wallet, you think about all the stuff that they have going, but they're almost. I have this theory, and I think that Joe, the ambassador, Joseph Kennedy, Kennedy made a deal with
Shanty Irish,
steam heat Irish. But we were the shanties. They were the steam heat. But Joe Kennedy, the ambassador, made a deal with the devil.
Yes, he did. The mafia.
No, the real devil. And he double-crossed the devil. And every generation, Satan killed one of his kids.
Yes.
I mean, and so I'm not a religious person, but Joe Kennedy made a deal with the devil. The devil killed his oldest son, Joe. Then the devil killed Jack. Then the devil killed Bobby. And then what happened to Chappaquiddick? Then comes the next generation. He killed a number of those Kennedys. Then he killed Jack's kid. He drowned Jack's kid in the airplane crash. And it's like he double-crossed the devil.
Well, I don't get that religiously
No.
You made a good case. For it.
He's the one guy. He made a deal, and then the devil gave him a stroke, and he's sitting on the porch in Hyannisport wrapped in heavy blankets, and Jack Kennedy's dead in Dallas. And all Joe Kennedy can do at this point is blink. He doesn't know which way to go. And did he know that his son was dead? And better yet, did he realize he could have stopped it because of his relationship with the mob?
Well, he would. Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. It was a mix between the underbelly of the Irish and the upper crust in the Fitzgeralds. I mean, he had no business. Why she married him is a mystery to me.
Well, they hated.
That's where the problem is.
Well, they hated Honey. Honey's his grandfather, maternal grandfather. Rose is Rose Fitzgerald, and that's where they get that name. Yes. And Honey was an old time Boston Paul, and he got caught with a woman. And it kind of, but there's a great book called the Kennedys and Fitzgeralds, and it's about the two families. And this great moment in the book, Honey Fitz is running for some office. I don't know. Well, it might have been mayor because he was with Michael Curley, and so he would go get. This is height of the American Depression. Honey would go to the coal yard, and they'd load up a truck full of coal. And
drop it off for the poor people.
No, he wouldn't do it. He never did it. He was driving.
I know. He didn't do it.
Drove around Southie with a truck full of coal, and the mix would yell at him, "Where are you going, honey?" And he'd say, "I'm driving coal to the poor." And then he drive back to the coal yard with a full truck. And
Sure.
Honey Fitzgerald is, and then when Jack ran, they didn't want him around, the so-called the Irish Mafia. They said, "Can't you get that SOB out of here?" He'd start to sing. He was half in the bag, but he at one time was a very powerful political force. But as we talked about Trump and his felonies, when they swell, and when the last hurrah is about Michael J. Curley, and
Yes.
Michael J. Curley is sworn
He's
in
in
a
jail.
jail cell.
In a jail cell.
The mix vote for him, and he's in a jail cell taking the oath. I mean, you gotta love.
Hey, Pete.
Yeah,
Pete, you mentioned the Irish Mafia. In the Bronx, when I was a kid, we called them the Murphia.
it was the white hand. The black hand was the Sicilian Italians, but the white hand.
Oh, yeah.
Was, and then that goes on to, Mickey Featherstone, and that whole the Southies, and the Irish. Nobody wanted to do business with the Irish. The Jews didn't want to do business with the Irish. The Mafia didn't want, and the Purple Gang in Detroit was an alcohol control. Was principally a Jewish gang, and a mixer. So
Mickey Cohen.
Well, Mickey Cohen actually comes out of New York and goes to California, but when the Irish, nobody would do business with them because they were such horrible people, and no, they wouldn't. I mean, the Jews wouldn't sell them alcohol. And remember, the war in Chicago was really about Italian Sicilians and the Irish gangs, and the Irish gangs were, everybody has their own. And so when I see this stuff about the Venezuelan gangs, okay, where's the difference?
No, there is none.
No, thank you.
There is none.
You come here. Hi. All right. So, all right, here's what we're going to do. We got to take a pause. Scott Hastings is coming up, and we'll talk about those Halloween night before Halloween. And Scotty's the one guy. I mean, you'd think here's this guy, pro ball player, and he and Dave Logan are doing radio together. And I started doing this. The first of the haunted house trips, I went on myself. I went alone, and believe me, I'm hardly a brave guy, but I had this idea. I said, "Man, how to spend a night in a haunted house?" And we were working for Lee Larson. Obviously, was the boss and the man, but Chris Olinger was a program director. And I went to Christine and I said, "Hey, I got this idea." She said, "No, man, help yourself." And the guy who came the next morning and set up the way to do the show was none other than Kenny Dhainin. Darrell joined us later, but I went to the place. It was called Matty Silks, and it was down on Larimer Street, and it had been not allegedly, I think it had been proven it had been a house of prostitution. A lot of the prostitutes were Asians. Opium was involved, and the people who worked there said they could hear the piano upstairs at night, and they could smell cigarettes. And there was a corner of this place where there was a woman murdered, and they said, "We don't go up there at night." So I went up and slept up there that night. And the next morning, when we brought the radio show in, a guy came in, and he was a warlock. And I said, "I'm on to something here." And that began it. And so Scotty coming up and a lot more, but I do want to talk about, we get a minute, the assassination attempts on Adolf Hitler. And if any of you, and there's a lot of good history buffs, but Erwin Rommel, they took Rommel's life, the Stauffenberg plot, everything that went with it. So hang on, 710 KNUS, I'm Peter Boyles. Here we go.
RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
$100 gift cards from Sean D's Persian Grill in the Denver Tech Center. Get them now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details.
Can you do this dance? The Thriller dance. There he is. Every Halloween afternoon or the day before Halloween, a bunch of people gather downtown and they do the Thriller dance. And love the Thriller dance. Scott Hastings on standby at Saturday, October 26th, a Halloween morning for all of us here on 710 KNUS. Happy today to talk to you about my friends at Water Pros. And Water Pros cares about the quality of your water. We have the system. You can remove forever chemicals and microplastics and hard water. And Water Pros Peter Boyles special for $3,195, which, it's a bite, but you get a whole water softener. You get point of use, reverse osmosis drinking water systems fully installed. Start the process and they will come and test your water. We've become good friends with these folks. Waterpros.net, and sign up for your free in-home consultation. They'll come to your home, they'll test your water and answer your questions and concerns. They'll show you all the science behind it. And then if you make the decision, I trust these guys, you will as well. Water Pros is family-owned, veteran-owned business dedicated to providing you the best in water treatment for less than the other guys. Go to waterpros.net today and request your free water test. This is just a gimme. 303-862-5554. That's 303-862-5554. And ask for the Peter Boyles special. Ladies and gentlemen, a pretty fair country talk show host, a real good basketball player, and a dear friend. Welcome to the radio show, Scott Hastings. Scotty, man, good morning and thank you.
Uncle Peter, good to see you. How you doing, my friend?
You know, I'm well, and we've decided to one more time go back in a Wayback Machine because I'm kind of over political talk radio right now, and I'd like to. And you and I had a private conversation. You said the good thing is you guys just do sports.
Over on Altitude 92.5, we just do sports now. With the Avs start, they've turned it around. That sometimes gets rough. With the Nuggets home opener, it can get a little rough. But let's be honest, it's not about retaining judges or presidents or anything like that.
But that's right. The big decisions. You got a game. What time's the game today?
You know what? I was going to come in studio with you today, but I found out the game's at 3. And I've got to be there at the arena by 1 today.
Yeah, it takes a lot. I mean, people will think, well, and there are some people that try and do it. You just come in, sit down and do a radio show, and people don't realize the couple of hours that you put into every show to do it right. And I can't imagine what it must be like to do a TV cast on a big sports event. That has to be a lot of pre-get ready.
Well, even when I was working with Dave, over at KOA, and doing the Broncos, and I was doing Broncos and Nuggets at the same time once the seasons crossed over. I would say this, and you probably find this even in your regular, doing regular political show. People ask me all the time, I've had bosses, well, how much time do you spend in prep? When aren't you prepping?
That's right.
When you do it, I mean, anytime you're watching a program, whether it's news related or sports related, or just worldly fun related, you and I are similar in the sense that let's bring a little entertainment value to our shows. So if we see something funny, I always answer, the preparation never stops. So, I mean, if you want me to sit down with pen and paper now, I did that with the Broncos because I was so fearful to look stupid with Uncle Dave. I would sit there on Friday night. I would spend about 5 hours, 6 hours getting my notes ready. We'd usually fly out Saturday for a road game. If not, I might get a little time Saturday, maybe spend another hour or so Saturday night. But yeah, you had to do that. But that's what it is. But listen, this is I was trying to do the math the other day. 42nd year in the NBA.
Wow.
Counting playing and broadcasting. So I kind of know what basketball is.
Yeah.
And the game itself is easy. It's just always learning new faces and stuff like that.
I got here, the show started at 9. I was in the building at 7. And I have those, I tell everybody, read the book, do this, do that. And then maybe you can hang around a year or two. But everything you say is right, especially writing a column. You're always writing the column.
Yeah.
You're not, and it sounds egocentric, and I don't mean it to be that way, but if you want to try and do it, you got to, precisely what you just said. You got to do it.
I'll tell you a funny story. It's not writing a column. We have a little segment on Fridays. I work with Darren McKee now and Tyler Columbus, and he proposed it to me in the last 2 minutes of Friday. And it's kind of, it's turned into a goodbye message of the week. And it's usually a positive thing. Usually has nothing to do with sports. I've gone biblical on it a couple times. But it's kind of a deep moment, and I really, it seems like a nothing throwaway segment, but for me, it's turned into a real deep moment. I was downstairs just a while ago here at the house, and I'm reading something. I'm going, that's perfect to talk about. I'm already prepping.
Oh yeah.
For an episode that's going to happen in 6.5 days. Here's Saturday morning before I come on with you.
By the way, I'm a huge DMAC fan. I got stories, and you do too. But Darren, he came in here after that last go round. He came in, sat in here with a couple hours and told stories. And I just think the world of DMAC. And he's just one of those original guys that gets to do radio.
He's a hard worker. He's a little bit like you. If DMAC or Peter Boyles is off the air, there's something wrong with Denver radio.
Well, it's kind, but you know that he's got heart, and we've been through it together. When did we? Let me switch because I got Darrell and Kenny coming up. So when was your first excursion? I remember there's a story I'm going to tell about you, but when was your first excursion into the haunted houses?
My very, very first one was with you, actually.
Yeah.
And it because we were just right across the hall from each other in the same building, and you were talking and stuff like that. It was always intriguing. And he said, "Well, you ought to stop by. We do a live broadcast tonight." And gosh, and I don't.
I can tell you where. The Grant Humphrey.
Well, I couldn't, but I do remember sitting down and Kenny, who you're going to have on, and you got to call him this because I nicknamed him Laugh Track because if he was out producing a remote or he was running the board, and he used to do it for the Broncos game.
Oh yeah,
and you can always hear him in the background. He had one of those laughs that lights up a room and is so recognizable. So I nicknamed him probably 20-some years ago, Laugh Track, and I still call him now. He's a grown-ass man and retired now, and I still call him Laugh Track. So throw that out at him a little bit later.
Promise.
I remember him, you, me, and it seemed like you might have had a producer or somebody else. And I left before y'all because y'all were going to roll out bedrolls and spend the night at this place. I didn't do that.
If this was the night, and believe me, they start to run together, was the Grant Humphreys mansion. And at that time, we had a boss that didn't like what we were doing. No names will be mentioned, but you and I talked about this in private. So we had to sweep the house, the mansion. The place was really creepy. And to get people out, was it you that said, "Don't forget the old man downstairs on the couch"? Was that you? And there was no...
No, that wasn't me, but I had an experience like that with another buddy that forgot his coat downstairs, went down there, came back. We met him at the radio station. He goes, "Who's the dude that was sleeping down on the couch?"
That was it.
Yeah, we were like,
nobody.
In fact, you know what? When and it was Casey who ran the board for us was that night. We ended up, back in the day when radio was awesome.
Yes.
We ended up getting a police sketch artist.
Oh, absolutely.
And came and met with Casey, or Casey met them. And actually, in fact, Andy Lindahl still has that drawing of that dude that was asleep on the couch, and there was no one else around. I think that was at the Croke Patterson.
I think you're right, because the Grant Humphreys, and we were sweeping the house. We had done the radio show, and I hadn't gotten to the point where I sold. If you wanted to come and spend the night, I put a price tag on it and gave the money to Step 13. But we were in there, and there was enough staffers and friends of the show, and somebody said, "Don't forget the old man on the couch," and there wasn't an old man on the couch. But did anything ever happen to you unexplicable in any of those places that we went?
Yeah. what we would do, we ended up doing ours, and it was fortunate because Uncle Dave didn't like this.
Oh, he did not.
So he's always in high school football. So we would go to a place, like you said, you get the tour, do your radio show, spend the night, and then we would get in the car the next morning, drive to another place, tell all of our experiences, and stand. I had 3 highly unexplainable things happen that stand out. The 4th that was kind of interesting, but and one involved Kenny, or 2 of them involved Kenny Dhainin. But Kenny Dhainin we were at the very top of the Crow Patterson, you know, where the turret is.
You bet.
And they have that little room and a bathroom and a bedroom up there.
Yep.
And they had these 2 desks kind of pushed in this corner, and they were kind of in the form of an L, the way they were set up. And Dave was off that day, so Charles Johnson, our good friend Charles Johnson, was doing the show with me, and we're sitting up there.
That's right, CJ. That's right, CJ was there. Yeah.
And Kenny starts telling the story about, man, it's been weird because back then you hardwired, right? You wired to.
Yep.
You might be lucky to have the truck with the antenna or whatever. So Kenny's running wires up 3 levels and bing, bing, and ding, and make sure we got power. And so he's in there, 4 or 5 hours before the show. And he said, man, we'd come over and the cables would be moved over here. He said we could come up one time and all the drawers in the the 2 desks were wide open. And he's saying this, and I'll never forget, we're live on air, and we're having Kenny's telling these stories. And Charles, who's a bit of a skeptic, goes, man, that's BS. None of that stuff. That stuff. Hey, if that's so real, why did it happen now? Why can't? And the desks, I said, they're pointing in opposite directions. So you would think that if there's a slope, you could explain it one way. There's a slope in the room, but 2 desks facing 2 different directions, about 3 or 4 drawers, 2 in each one, all of a sudden slide open.
I remember that.
As soon as CJ says that, last thing I know, I had to do the last 5 minutes of that segment alone because CJ
left town. CJ, I remember CJ left town because I saw him the next morning in the newsroom, and
he threw that headset down, ran out.
Hey.
I'm laughing. Kenny's laughing. We kind of finished up the segment, go to break. I have to go down the street. He's out sitting on his car. I ain't going in there.
Not going back in.
He called me Scooty. It's a Scooty. I ain't going back in there. So that was one.
Yeah.
We were staying. Did you ever do the Victor Hotel?
Oh, absolutely.
So we're up in the room where what was the guy, Kenny or Freddie? I can't remember the guy that supposedly was the miner that got up and the elevator opened, but there wasn't an elevator and he fell 5 stories to his death, or whatever. So we're in his room. Now I am a coward, so I'm in that room. And listen, when I did these things, I had a Bible I traveled with me, and it sat right on the nightstand, right beside me, right there. If it was demonic, I was going right into Matthew or Luke or something.
Scott Hastings is with us. Who was the woman that went with you? I'm trying to think. There, you took a woman on one of those long distance trips, and she was not happy. Who was it that went with you?
Well, I don't know. That's a good one.
Because you remember there was a woman that we all worked with who didn't like men. She was not a fan of men, but she was.
So
yeah.
You're narrowing it down to about 90% of the ladies
we worked with
back in our day.
Yeah, but so we're in a grant, and so she said to me, "Can I sleep with you?" And I was a straight guy when I was married, and I said, "Yeah, come on." When we went down the hall, and she was like, everybody's looking because she was lovely. She was a very good looking woman. So we go to bed, and about, I don't know what time it was, gives me the shoulder. And I was, what? And she said, "Would you walk me to the bathroom?" because that place was so over the top. And we would take Dennis Gallagher with us, the late Dennis Gallagher, and Tom Noel, but nobody wanted to spend the night. And they'd get up, and just like you're talking about CJ, they would leave.
Yeah.
And then we'd be there.
Well, let me finish this Victor story. So I always had somebody stay in the room with me, and we had one of our guys who's an intern, and we called him Big Country. And so he had a rollaway bed right at the foot of my bed. So my feet is like facing south. His head is at the south, and his feet is facing west, right? So we're kind of in that configuration. We get in bed. I put my sweats on. He pulls on the covers. It's late at night, probably 1 or 2 in the morning, because we did the the recorders and all that stuff. We actually had a paranormal group with us at that time.
Yep.
And we just turned the lights off, laid our heads down. We're laying there, probably not 10, 15 seconds. And I hear this whisper that's coming off to the left of me. Now, if my head is at north, feet is south, it's to my east. I mean, right there, right to my left. And I hear in a whisper, "Who are you?"
Ooh.
And I go to Big Country, and I said, "Country, you say something?" He goes, "No." "Did you?" I go, "No." I said, "What did you hear?" He goes, "Who are you?" That's what I heard. Now, he later tells me he thought he heard it down, in a whole different direction himself. I go, "Well, it wasn't me." Next thing I know, I'm hearing, and he has hit the floor. He has hit the floor and running. Well, it turned out I was actually in my underwear. I get up out of bed. I pull the covers back. I grab my sweats because we're going to go out in the hallway now. I put one leg in. I start to put my other leg in, and my big toe gets around the string. And so I'm hopping, one leg in, one leg out, toe stuck in a string, one leg hopping out of this room as fast as we could, got out there. Now, the funny thing, and we had a rule, and I'm sure you did too, no playing around. We weren't trying to do
That's right. That's right.
We caught something, we wanted to be legit.
Yep.
We get out there. There was a paranormal group there that was on a floor below us. Started going back, and we told them what time and all this, what happened. Went back. That was caught on their recorder.
Wow.
And almost the precise time. And they had the recording of it, of "Who are you?" So I think that's pretty good.
We would go to the melting pot. We went twice. I'm getting told to break. Can you hang, Scotty? Let me.
Yeah.
Okay, please. The two and only Peter. I just lost him. You got to call him back. Scott Hastings is with us. Coming up, Kenny and Darrell. We're talking about Halloween nights before that we spent in haunted houses, and the stories are great. Legend Scott Hastings with all of us right back. Get them back right after this.
RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
$100 gift cards from Sean D's Persian Grill in the Denver Tech Center. Get them now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
$100 gift cards from Sean D's Persian Grill in the Denver Tech Center. Get them now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details.
There you go. Bobby Boris Pickett, who was a disc jockey. They did the MASH. We'll play that later in the morning because I got to get back to work. Saturday, October 26, 24, Halloween time on 710 KNUS. We have Scott Hastings with us. Hey, Scotty, the wizard wanted to join us. Kenny, come on with Scotty. Scott and Kenny are here, and Kenny will be with us next hour. But the one and only Kenny Dhainin, Scotty, he wanted to join us on the air. Hey, Doc, Doc, go ahead, man, quickly, because we're on time.
How you, Scooty?
Hey, buddy. Hey, tell him the moniker laugh track fitted.
I can do that.
You guys,
cool.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just told Peter the story about CJ up in the Crook Patterson when you were telling about all the silly stuff that was happening, and he was scoffing at it and didn't believe it. And as soon as he did that, all them drawers started rolling out of those two desks, and he took on, and we were like, well, there you go.
Because of time, Scott, after all of those years, and Kenny did every one with me, and I have my own opinions, what do you think? What did you come away with?
That we don't know nothing.
That's
to be honest with you, that or they're different realms or they're different planes. You know, some people I've read lately that hauntings are past souls of people, but they can be demonic. And I think that is true in some instances. Peter, I don't know. I think there's too much evidence. I think you and a little bit our little zoo boot tour thing. We're about 10 years ahead of the curve because after we started doing it now, all of a sudden there's about 15 shows. We got plumbers on the East Coast doing shows.
Yeah,
shows. I'm like, we were a little bit before everybody.
Well, Kenny, do you remember the first time? And it was the Matty Stokes Good Life Room, and I stayed.
Oh yeah, in downtown Denver.
And I stayed by myself upstairs. And when I came down, I was telling Adam the story. But this guy comes in, Scotty, truly, this guy comes in. And he says to me, "I am a warlock." And at the meeting, that light went on. Said, "I got something." This has wings. And I thought, didn't you bring the remote in that morning? I think you were there. Yeah, Kenny was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kenny went on all of them. He went, Scooty, he went with you, always came with me. Yeah.
I don't know if Kenny will remember. Remember we were staying, and it was one of them mining towns.
Fairplay?
I can't remember. I don't. And we were in this big, grand, like hotel. They had this great dining room. You were actually there the night before setting up, and you had dinner. You had dinner at the place. Do you remember that? And you thought you were just getting bad service.
Yeah.
And we were with the next day. We were with the owners. And Kenny's telling this story, and the guy goes, "We didn't have any lady servers that day."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was watching this lady walk back and forth by him, and was never asking if he.
That's what a deal.
We always went, and then when we started to sell it for money, to make money for Step. Kenny, do you remember the night that the glass of water slid down the table in front of the listeners, and you and I were there, and I didn't see it, and all of a sudden the whole place goes nuts. And Scotty, there was a glass of water on the table, and it moved like all by itself for about 1.5 feet. And these listeners,
I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear you guys.
Oh man, we lost you. Kenny, we're up on time. Are we?
Yeah, that was the Yak and Yeti.
Yes. And we came out. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a quick turnaround. Say goodbye to Scotty off Air Force. I'll call him tomorrow because he did this. Kenny, you just hang on because you're coming up next. I am Peter Boyles. This is Radio Free Denver, good old 710 KNUS. A break in the action. We're going to do Halloween. Darrell Luebbe will join us, and it is staying in haunted houses. And again, a reminder what we're going to do on election night, but I'll tell you all about everything on the other side. Adam Walker's done a great job. He's going to hold on. 75 will be the high. 80 tomorrow, Monday, 82 degrees. Please stay here. We'll do a quick turn. Halloween time, 710 KNUS. There it is. Halloween time, Saturday morning, October 26th, 2024. Good old 710 KNUS, Denver's talk station with Peter Boyles Saturday morning. Phone number, we'll get to calls later, 303-696-1971. It's our Halloween show, and moments ago, it's got Hastings with us and Kenny Dhainin, Darrell Luebbe about to join us. But I want to, again, plug what we're going to do election night here on 710 KNUS. I have never anchored an election night, and so I came up with this idea. We'll see how it works. Actually, that's probably a steal from Dave Logan and those guys at KOA. Turn on your television, turn down the sound, and turn on us at 710 KNUS. And I'm going to put on a radio show. Mike Rosen is going to join us, Ted Trimba, Patty Calhoun, hopefully Dr. Brian June-Depp, Brother Jeff, Deborah Flora, Jeff and Billy, John Caldera, all of your calls and everything that we're going to do. It's going to be a great night. As I mentioned, nobody goes home early, and I'm looking forward to a really amazing election returns night. Now, in the meantime, and I don't even know what year it was, that I had this wild idea of spending the night before Halloween in a haunted house. Maddie Silk's Good Life Room that was on Larimer Street was the first place I went, and I spent the night upstairs by myself. Here are the two guys that make all of this possible, never let us down. No matter where I wanted to go, or Scotty or anybody wanted to go, they were up for it. Without these two, nothing would have happened. Just moments ago, you heard Kenny with us. He was with us with Scott, joining us, the talented, and these are all just wonderful friends, Darrell Luebbe. So, hey, Darrell, thank you for coming up on a Saturday morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning, my friend.
And also, Kenny, thanks for staying. And you were telling a story. Well, first of all, let's go back. Do you guys have any idea what year we did this for the first time? Ken, do you have any idea what? Because I can't. I don't remember.
Well, the first thing I remember doing was when we had Ward Lucas with us over at the press club.
No, before that.
Before that, was it?
Way before that. I went with Ward. Ward and I went, and he passed away. I don't know if you guys knew that.
Yes. Yeah.
And what a fine man he really was. And we had this challenge, and there used to be a newspaper, and I think it was called Up the Creek.
Yes, it was.
And this guy had this article that he lived where there was cattle mutilations and all kinds of bizarre things were happening. And I invited him into the studio. We were working at KHOW then. And he kind of had a challenge. And so I called Ward. Ward's hobby was, he was a paranormal investigator.
Right.
And so I said, could we come out and spend the night? And the guy said, yeah. And I'll tell you who went. Jim Turner, JT.
Yeah.
Our producer at the time, a woman who I can't remember, Ward Lucas, me, the late, great Alan Dumas from Westward.
Yeah.
Did you go on that one, or did Kenny go on that one? Who went on? I mean, did Darrell go? You went.
Did not go on that one.
Darrell, did you go on that one?
No, I sure didn't. In fact, I think that was before I took the position where I would be doing things like that with you.
Yeah, you didn't have a job. You had a position.
Yeah, my position is horizontal most of the time.
That's right. I forget who board opped that or came out with us, but it was so bizarre. And
was it Jan Chadwell?
Yes, Jan the Man. That's right. It was Jan the Man. And so we go out there, and it was Looney Tunes. And So we're all gonna, and there was this guy, the guy said that the Bigfoot or whatever it was came through this closet at night. So I said, I want to sleep in that room where it comes through the closet. And so I moved into that room, and everybody came into the room, and JT was there. And so these people were pursuing it. They were drinking, and so Ward pulls me aside and says, "Hey, Pete, they're going to come after us tonight." And so he started stringing tripwires. This is a true story. He started.
Yeah.
He's trying to, and long story short, nobody comes out of the closet, and they left us alone. But I came downstairs early in the morning. There's two guys sitting outside drinking coffee. And the one guy's name was Bela. I think it was Bela Schreiber. And they were the Rocky Mountain debunkers. And they had snuck in the middle of the night. And they were outside the house. And so DeMaw slept outside in the tent. Well, they were out there partaking of the magic weed. And this guy had this great big friendly dog. And the dog stuck his head in the tent, and DeMaw, the tent ran. They got up and the tent's running. And I said, wow, we're on to something. And then the next one was the stayed upstairs at the Matty Silks, and then the guy came in and said he was a warlock. Kenny, you sure you weren't on that warlock show?
Yeah, I forget who was on that one, but it could have been.
Again,
it could have been John. Oh gosh, he was an engineer when we were over on Lawrence Street.
Okay. Because I can't remember a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And what is it and you went on, the first one you went on was what?
Oh, wow. Well, there was one at the Paramount.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There was Matty Silks.
Yeah.
There was, then we started doing the mansions around town. And, oh gosh, yeah. And then we stared doing, traveling to some weird places.
Yes.
and doing remotes out there. It was really weird. The Yak and Yeti remote was nothing happened the whole time. Nothing happened, and people are all around, sitting at tables and stuff like that until that glass.
The glass moved. The glass moved. Yeah.
Yep.
Darrell, where's the first one of those you went on?
I'm thinking it's the Dunathan Castle.
Ooh, that's right. We went. Yeah.
I think that was it, and then of course we did the old musical hall down at Square.
That was weird.
Oh, that was terrific. That was a great time.
Yes.
And
I remember that one.
Yeah, just there were so many great places and so much fun. And I can't remember the name of the mansion downtown where the dogs apparently went through and upstairs.
Was that Grand Humphreys?
Grand Humphreys, yes, it was.
Yeah.
Now here's a trick that
you did several remotes there.
We did because it was so good. Here's one Kenny did to me. So we were always told that the Paramount Theater was haunted, and so Kenny. And so there's a thing called he's laughing already. There's a thing called a ghost light, and they leave a ghost light on the stage. So finally, I don't know, and it was a crazy night. And so finally, I'm the manager of the hotel of the theater has his own little office, and he had a big couch in it. So I'm done with this. So I go upstairs, and I get in a blanket, and I roll up on the guy's couch. Darrell. So what I don't know is we went to the Lumber Baron too. I forgot just the guys. Yep. So I don't know. They have this full-size cutout of the Chewbacca.
Oh, nice.
Now, yes, Kenny, it is now your story. Tell the story.
Well, if if you stood behind this character, it's cut out of cardboard, but if you stood behind it, it almost looked alive. And I thought it'd be great to put it in the doorway, so when Pete got up and around, that he would see Chewbacca standing there greeting him.
You brought him right in.
Anyway, it
no,
was,
there's not an anyway. Guys, I'm as blind as a bat. I wear glasses, but I knew where the men's room quote was. And I get up, and like, as you know, gentlemen, as you know, as we get older, many times we get up. I get up without my glasses. I take one step, and here's this big hairy monster standing there looking at me. I punched it in the face.
You probably didn't need to go to the bathroom again after that, did you?
I punched it, and like, because it was a wham, and then I realized what a fool I am, and I had knocked over this Chewbacca, and I figured it was one of you guys, and it was Kenny. Kenny snuck in while I was asleep and set the Chewbacca up. But
hey, what fun! I mean, those are good memories, man.
Oh, hey, how about what was that place in Morrison? Wiz, what was that place?
Oh, dude,
that's
that was
the
Morrison
grill.
Inn.
No,
it's across the bridge from the Morrison Inn.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Darrell, you were there.
Yeah, I remember the great breakfast at the grill. But,
yes, yes.
Yeah, I didn't spend the night with you. And as I remember, that's where, Kenny, did you hear footsteps in the middle of the night?
Yeah, and I thought, well, this is when we would start these occasions, and I call them occasions because nobody would believe what we did, but during it, we would invite listeners to come and join us.
Yes. Yes.
And so I was in a room with a school teacher, and I slept on one side of the room. He was on the other side, but he was down about 3 steps or 3 stairs below where I was sleeping. So in the middle of the night, I hear him get up, and he goes clump, clump, clump up the stairs, and I assume was headed to the bathroom, because he went out the door, and I heard the bathroom door close, or so I thought. And pretty soon he comes back in, goes down the stairs, gets back into bed, or so I thought. The next morning, we're over at the Morrison Inn doing the show, and he comes in, and I ask him why he didn't
I
flush
remember
the
this.
toilet.
Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why he didn't flush the toilet? And he says, "Well, I didn't go to the bathroom."
I didn't get up. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
that was a weird place.
It was.
Do you
It
remember?
was. Well, the lady told us that the animals that she had on this place would, on some nights, some evenings, would start verbalizing.
Yeah, she had cats and dogs.
Yeah, mooing and whinnying and doing all the things that they do normally, but they shouldn't be doing them in the middle of the night. And
it had been a stage stop, I think, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, an old yes, it was.
Yeah,
as I remember it.
And remember, her daughters came, and I think it was there. Kenny Dhainin, Darrell Luebbe, Peter Boyles talking our old Halloween stories. 710 KNUS Denver's talk station. It's going to be 75 for a high. And remember, her daughters came and said things would chase them down the hall. And I brought a fellow biker with me who is no longer with us, who he's going to stay in the room with me. And he's like, "I need to show you something." And he pulls back his jacket. He's got a gun. And
Wow.
I said, "You got a gun?" I said, "These are ghosts." I remember that. Yeah.
You can shoot blanks. Yeah.
What he said, "I got this, Peter." I said, "A lot of luck." What my daughter went one night and never went back. We went, and remember the sheiks in on some of this stuff too, which made it extra special.
Yeah.
And so he volunteered 2 paranormal investigative teams. What we did not realize is they hated each other. You remember that night?
I do. That was in one of the mansions downtown.
I had to throw I had to get up and throw one of them out, throw the team out.
Yeah. It was crazy, man.
Oh, remember Mrs. Owens came? The governor's wife came and she was intrigued by it. She came and they brought some state patrol guys and they were with us.
Yeah.
Oh, that was so great. Those were times, fellas. Those were times.
Hey, can I tell a little story? Go ahead, Darrell. Sorry.
Oh no, that's all right. I'm just going to say those really were just great fun times.
Oh.
And you know, I think it's the same place where you're talking about where the Sheik was at, that they had a big coat of arms, not a coat of arms, armor suit. You know, the full body.
Yes.
Metal suit, and that thing used to just scare the snot out of me.
And then we'd go upstairs. I mean, and the people that lived there, they would tell you, "Hey, don't mess with this stuff."
Yeah.
And of course, like
that was our cue.
No, really? I think Peter Boyles with, of course, the 2 of the very best, Kenny and Darrell. And I don't know how many years we did it.
A lot of years.
A lot of years.
Oh man. Yeah, it's just crazy. Remember Casey Lamb went back down?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Tell that story.
Well, we were everybody was packing up and moving out, and I remember down in the basement they had a bunch of pinball machines, and Casey ran back downstairs to get something, and came up just about white as a ghost himself, because he swears he saw somebody down there playing one of those darn machines.
Yeah.
And the place was empty. You know?
The one I remember, and I brought it up with Scott, and if you guys can remember, we were in Grand Humphreys, I think, and we got to the point. I think Lee did it for us, but we'd have to sweep the house, before I got the grand idea of selling. You can spend a night with us, but you got to pay, and then we would give the money to Bob Cote at Step, and and this is what I remember. I was thinking about it last night. And as and Scotty talked about it, we were getting ready. We were getting ready to shut down for the night. And they called it sweeping the house to make sure, sweeping wherever we were, to make sure only the people that were supposed to be there were there. And someone said, "Don't forget the old man downstairs on the couch."
Right. Yeah.
Tell that story, Kenny, because then you might remember. I didn't remember it clean, but
this was too spooky.
Yeah.
And this involved Casey Lamb again.
Yes.
Because as we were making sure we were all in our places and not doing something stupid.
Yeah.
We had everybody check in. So the next morning we get up and we're visiting about how we were doing certain things in the morning and getting ready to leave, and what experiences do we have. So Casey says, "Well, my roommate," and we said, "What roommate? You were the only one that was downstairs." And he says, "No, the guy was sleeping on the couch."
That was it.
Yep.
That was it. And Scotty
so
talked.
We went downstairs, and there's nobody on the couch.
Yeah, Scotty talked about that. But I remember there was they said the old man on the couch, sitting on the couch.
Yeah.
And there was no old man on the couch. I can say that for all the years we did it, nothing ever happened to me. So what I'm going to do, we got to break, pay the bills. When we come back, did anything ever happen to either one of you? And then number two, what did you learn? Darrell Luebbe and Peter Boyles and Kenny Dhainin, and thank you to Scott Hastings. It is a break in the action for the normal political talk. This is Halloween time. We'll talk more with the listeners this morning. The Black Eyed Pea of Colorado, locally owned and operated by Steve and Michelle. I love the restaurant. Homestyle cooking, worth going out for. 8 locations. There's one near you. They are great. When's the last time you took your family unit to eat at the Black Eyed Pea? They got daily specials. They got senior discounts, to be sure. And check on the new menu items, the stuffed spuds, 8 different delicious baked potatoes, just a few, the chopped steak spud, the sweet pork spud, the meatloaf stuffed spud, yes, broccoli cheese. There's so much more. Everybody in your party is sure to find a favorite. Make your dinner party, rehearsal dinner, wedding receptions, company events a success with the Black Eyed Peas. There's one near you, no matter what the occasion. The Black Eyed Pea gift cards are always great. So whether you purchase them for your spouse, birthday favors, holiday presents, they got you covered. I love everything about these restaurants. It's great. There's 8 of them. Keep it in Colorado and visit the Black Eyed Pea.
RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
$100 gift cards from Sean D's Persian Grill in the Denver Tech Center. Get them now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details.
I ain't afraid no ghost. Busted makes me feel good. One of the great tunes. It's Halloween time. Real Halloween is Thursday night, 7:10 KNUS on a Saturday morning. Pretty good weather. I'm looking at Thursday night. Thursday high will be 53 and Friday morning is 55. You can get by. Hey, put on a coat. Get out. Get the free stuff. Saturday, October 26th, we're reminiscing about one of my old stunts, and actually certainly not mine, but Darrell's and Kenny's and Scotty's and everybody. The night before Halloween, find a haunted house and spend the night. Let us go back to the two great guests. These guys, none of it would have ever happened without Kenny and without Darrell, and certainly with Scotty. It's a moment. So I want to ask something. I never had anything happen to me other than Kenny putting Chewbacca in the bedroom with me. I never, and true Pete Boyles fashion, I remember punching the Chewbacca, and then it just like kind of folded, and I went, Peter, and then I had a few things to say to myself. Kenny, did anything ever happen to you, and what do you think all of this is really about?
Well, I'm a believer that there is some supernatural stuff out there that occurs every now and then to different people. They just have to be in the right place at the right time, sort of say. But there was one event that really spooked me, and that was the event up in the Fairplay Hotel. You heard the story earlier about the supposed lady that kept, because I was there the night before, and I went in for some dinner, and the waitress just ignored me, or so I thought, because the manager of the hotel told us later that they had no waitresses on duty that night. That was kind of spooky. But the really weird thing was the next night, a whole group came up from KHOW and KOA. Alan Jackson, who is currently the producer of the Broncos radio broadcast, he was there. Scooty was there. There was just a bunch of personnel there. And so we're walking through the hotel, going into the back dining room. So I'm telling them the story about the so-called waitress. And all of a sudden, as we walk into the kitchen, this 30-quart kettle for boiling and cooking things came flying over all of us and landed on the floor in front of the group as we walked through there. Now that was physical. We don't know who threw that pot or what threw that pot, but that really spooked me out.
Yeah. Switch over to Darrell. Did anything?
Pete, go ahead.
You say.
Well, I was just going to say, I can't think of anything that really made my hair stand on end or anything like that. I know it was tough to sleep because there always was people moving around. Like you said, the paranormal people were trying to see what they could find. So I was always aware of people moving around, and so I never got a good solid night's sleep. So I guess maybe I never succumbed to it, if you will, deep enough to. The best night's sleep I had was at Heritage Square, because I took my sleeping bag and my sleeping pad and I slept outside on one of the upper balconies.
I forgot we went there.
Wow. Yeah, Darrell, that's good, man.
That was a terrific place because you had a big stage.
Yes.
You had an audience. They had the buffet dinner. I mean, it was a great event.
I forgot we went there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that whole place is gone now, but that was a really fun place.
I forgot.
I enjoyed Heritage Square a lot. But like I say, I remember that was probably the best sleep I had on any of these events that we went to.
And it would get to be about June, and I'd start getting phone calls from people that said, well, my house is haunted, or this is haunted, or that's haunted, and you guys ought to go. And we went to plenty of places. They said, we don't want you guys in this place. Don't even think it. But we got turned away a lot. So, I mean, I honestly, and I didn't get a chance to ask you, Darrell, what do you think it was all about? What do you think this is all about?
I just think it's people enjoy being scared. People enjoy that shock value, if you will. Even little kids, 4 or 5 years old, if you scare them, they enjoy it. And I think people really are hoping that something would happen. I have to admit that when we went on these events, I always hoped that I would see something, I'd hear something would make me a real believer. But and the stories we heard from people were, I always thought they were very credible, but it just never happened to me, unfortunately.
The same way. I had nothing ever happen to me. I've had 2 things happen in my life that I can't explain, but nothing to do connected to the radio shows that we did. I used to have my mom on, and between 1st grade and 5th grade, my dad rented, and the place has just been torn down now. My dad rented this place, and I'm not playing a violin here, but the house had been moved, and they had dug a basement that was dirt, and that's where the furnace was, and you could open a door in what we called the living room. You could look straight down, you could see dirt. And my little brother was born. And now my mother never told us this story till we were out of that house and we were young adults. And so she's with my brother in this side room, and in the door walks a woman, dressed in sort of turn of the century clothing, and walked in and nodded to her and walked out. My mother kept that story to herself. And I'm sure she told my dad, but she'd never told us as kids. And it was a house that I loved. I think the house, this is really crazy, the house loved us, and we loved that house. And we had to move out of it because it had lots of problems. But that's the one story and my mom always told the truth. And she saw the old lady. And then I have a friend that's a homicide cop, and he used to come on the show and tell the story about some things that he had witnessed as a homicide cop. Well, they weren't making that stuff up. I mean, that stuff was real. Yeah. And that's, and I had some things that are just sort of mine and mine alone, but I don't know. But we went, and things happened. You remember, Kenny, when we went to that house there was no wind in that house, but they had mobiles in that house, and they all started to turn when you went in the room?
Yep.
That was weird.
Yes, it was. And I even took pictures of that
place,
because the mobiles that were in that room, when I went back in there by myself, they started moving.
Yeah, I remember you telling me.
One of them would look one way, and then I would turn away from it and come back in, and it would be going the other way.
Yeah.
For no reason, no apparent reason.
Yeah. I remember you telling me.
Yeah, there was no breeze blowing in there. There was nothing open to the outside, so it was spooky.
And then I thought, well, okay, everybody wanted to go. I mean, everybody that was at least a 25 IQ wanted to go along on these jaunts. So we started selling them, and I gave the money to Bob over Step. And we raised money by doing this, but I don't know. I was really thinking about this stuff last night. I don't know if we, when we would go to places, and we'd have dinners and all this kind of stuff and throw people out. And if people paid extra money, they could spend the night. The last time we did it, we went upstairs, and what was in it was where people got married all the time. It was
right next to the governor's mansion,
and it was also right next to the graveyard of those, and the three of us went upstairs, and I always made a joke that we were like, and we are three old people that we just sat up all night and talked.
That's right.
You remember that?
Yeah.
Of course,
the three of us, and we were, we're going to, it was going to be spooky time and everything. And we ended up going up where the bride slept or something. I don't know, it was the bridal suite. And like the old three bats that we are, we just sat around, told radio stories and told growing up stories. And all of a sudden it was time to go back on the air and do the show. So I don't know if we could even do them again. One of the things that Adam said, could we do it again? I said, nah, I think it's gone. I don't know if we could ever do anything. But like Scotty said, everybody picked up on what we were doing there. Now they're doing shows. And I went, yeah, they are. But
I'm beyond sleeping on the floor anymore. I think
that was it. That was where that one place I had to come. It was called, quote, The Study. And my daughter wanted to go so bad. And I said, you sure? Oh, yeah. And she got scared that night. But we had the competing paranormal investigators, if you guys remember that. Oh, and I had to throw those guys out. It was like, okay, Peter.
How old was Shannon when she wanted to go? I don't remember.
She would graduate from college, and she was, I think maybe she was still in college, but she said, Dad, I want to go. And I said, all right, you make sure you want to go, because I'm not driving you home at 2:30 in the morning. I really want to go. And we slept on the floor in this study. I don't know where we were on that one, but that's when the Sheik booked 2 acts. Boy, that was a night. And Sheik came in and said, hey, these people are fighting. No.
That's what you need.
I needed that. Yeah. I tell you both how much I love you, and how much you both mean to me, and the fact that we pulled those off. We really did.
Yeah.
And
those were great times.
Oh, and well, I love what you just said. I'm too old to sleep on the floor.
Yeah, that's getting too old to sleep anywhere.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you're not in your own bed,
boy.
But we you can't sleep in a car anymore. What's wrong with us?
Well, there's quite a list behind that question.
No fooling. But this is Darrell Luebbe and Kenny Dhainin, and they are legends in this business. They truly are. And they always were the background guy. Here's a story. Darrell and I. Darrell's dad rode motorcycles, and he had a black and white picture of your dad's motorcycle. You remember this?
An old Indian.
It was an Indian. Yeah.
Yep.
And we were trying to figure what year Indian it was. And Kenny, we put it up on the internet. People, I don't know how many hits we got on that. People from California, from everywhere. And what year did that bike turn out to be?
I want to say it was like a 47.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, it was a tank shifter.
And I remember, Pete, what you enjoyed most about the picture were the chickens around
there was chickens walking around the front tire of the motorcycle, the Indian. It was a tank shifter, and it was on your dad's farm, right?
Yeah, well, actually, he drove at that time. He was driving a gasoline truck, delivered fuel to the farmers around Nebraska.
Okay.
And, but yeah, we, Mom had chickens and big garden and all that jazz. So chickens were a normal part of life.
And that was one of those. For me, it was like so cool that we did that. I can't tell you guys how much you mean, and maybe we'll get a holiday lunch in this with Lee Larson, certainly before Christmas. How's that?
Oh, absolutely.
We could probably sell the 4th seat at the table for $200.
You better check and make sure they've got a low IQ.
Well, better yet, with anything you hear at this table, you cannot repeat.
There you go. Right on.
The stories that could be told.
Yep.
I just want you to know. I mean, we're Thursday night's Halloween. I love you both, and thank you so much.
You guys are brothers. Back at you, man.
Thanks for doing the show. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
All right, you guys. Darrell Luebbe. All right, Darrell Luebbe Kenny Dhainin. I wanted to get that in. It is. Well, Halloween is Thursday night. So, good morning, everybody. It is Saturday, October 26, 2024. Good morning. And I need to do a couple of things. I do want to talk about, and I was listening to Billy and Jeff. So I'm driving to the gym, and they're talking about all this nonsense that I was listening to, not only, syndicated here, all over talk radio, everything else. Adolf Hitler's general. I want generals like Adolf Hitler. No, you don't. Hitler's generals tried to kill him 3 times. There were 8 really, as a geek about all of that stuff, there were 8 attempts on Hitler's life. Let's come back. We'll talk a little bit about that. And it's open lines about Halloween or whatever you want to do. Danny Kaplison, the law firm. And we're going to do this election night. And I'm going to try and get Danny to break kayfabe and come over and do a show with us and give his predictions. For that night, for election night, so far the list of who's going to be on the show is just going to be outstanding. So, you know what? I got $20, says Kenny, Darrell, that Dan will do it. Dan Kaplis, who has been a great friend for a long, long time back with these guys, suggests that you choose a lawyer who shares your values because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says so much about you. Danny, we talk about how he grew up and everything about him. He's just been a great friend. And Dan's believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar jury verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan's also believed to have won the largest truck crash case verdict in Colorado history. Dan Kaplis, the official law firm partner of the Nuggets and the Avalanche. Dan Kaplis Law's serious firm for serious cases. My friend, and what he did for my family was incredible. Dan accepts righteous jury cases on percentage fee basis so he can represent good people from all walks of life. If you need help, pick up the phone, 303-770-5551, or hit Kaplis Law on the internet. It's Kaplis, Kaplis law.com. If you need help, that man is there.
RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
$100 gift cards from Sean D's Persian Grill in the Denver Tech Center. Get them now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details.
The Addams Family. This is good. Do 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 do. Bunk bunk. Halloween time, 7:10, KNUS, Denver's talk station. Thank you for being here. 75 will be the high. I rode my motorcycle into work, and it was like, whoa. But it'll be great to ride this afternoon. All's well. To Scott, Hastings, and Kenny and Darrell, thank you guys very much. This week has been really just a blowout on real history. And a claim was made that Donald Trump wanted German generals because they would do what Donald Trump said to do. It's anything but true. I wonder, but as a history geek, and this has nothing to do with what I'm about to say, but I was driving to the gym. I'm listening to Billy and Jeff, and they're talking about it. So I hit the phone. There's a hotline, a red button, and as a history geek, there were 6 assassination attempts on the life of the Fuhrer, and from the beer hall, the conspiracy, the cabal of those Nazi dissidents, there were six assassination attempts, and the beer hall in 1921, which sets it off, when that's 20 years before the start of the Second World War. The beer hall's in November of 21, and this young and still largely unknown radical makes this speech at Munich's famed Hofbrauhaus beer hall, and along with members of the newly formed Nazi Party. That's why Hermann Goering had all the problems. He had been shot, and that's why he becomes a heroin addict, a morphine addict, because he had been shot. And Hitler spoke, and a drunken brawl breaks out, and Hitler was unhurt, but there were people that were hurt, but they shot at him. It was the famous beer hall putsch. And then in 1938, there was another plot, and there was this Swiss, I think he was a theologian or a theology student, and he brought a pistol. He's stalking Hitler across Germany, and he's convinced that the so-called Fuhrer is a threat to Catholicism, an incarnation of Satan, all that goes with that. So it's November 9, 1938. So we're getting closer, and then he attempts to take that shot. The Gestapo finds his gun, and he confesses, and he's guillotined. Then comes the 1939, the beer hall bomb, and they're struggling. There's a German carpenter who's also a communist and who is vehemently opposed. And so in 1938, he resolves to do something, and knowing that Hitler would speak at Munich's, I forget, whatever, one of those beer halls. And it was on the anniversary of the putsch, and he builds this bomb, and he gets behind the speaker's platform, and he clandestine labor, and he installs the bomb, and it's set to explode. And I forget the time, but it doesn't work out. He planned his bombing to perfection, but no luck. And that was when they kept talking about that God loved the Fuhrer and would protect him. 8 people were killed when that bomb went off, but Hitler was not among them. Then 1943, the Brandy bomb, and this was one of those plots. And again, there's German generals. When Hitler arrives there's a German military officer who's disillusioned, and before the Fuhrer and his entourage get on the airplane, he approaches and wants to take a parcel, and has 2 bottles, I think, of brandy to a friend in Berlin. And they have these 30-minute fuses. I remember reading again and again about it, but it doesn't work. It's another planned coup by the German high command, but the plan went up in smoke a couple of hours later. Then in 1943, there's yet another, the suicide mission. After the brandy bomb doesn't work, and the co-conspirators make another attempt on Hitler's life. Again, these are general staffers. And the Fuhrer is scheduled to make a tour, and there's an exhibition, I think, of Soviet flags that were captured and Soviet weaponry, and they decide to try. Benino say that once again they fail. Then the July plot in 44. And certainly after this was the one that's called the Stauffenberg plot. And Hitler's in the Wolf's Lair, and Klaus von Stauffenberg, who's this colonel who had lost an eye. I think many people have seen the film, and I think he lost one of his hands in North Africa. And now he's got all the generals, and they plan to kill the Fuhrer with a hidden bomb. And Stauffenberg put the plan into action. It was July of 44, and he and several other Nazi German generals were called to this conference at the Wolf's Lair, and they arrive, and he arrives. He's got a briefcase with plastic explosives and connected to an acid fuse. And after placing his case as close to Hitler as he could, Stauffenberg leaves the room under pretense of making a phone call. The bomb detonates, and 4 people were killed, and Hitler escapes again, non-life threatening. And they begin to move, and they knew, and this whole plot gets unveiled, and that's the one that, again, if you're a reader, then you know who gets caught up in it. And one of the people caught up in it was probably conceivably the best general that was on the general staff. It's Erwin Rommel, and the Desert Fox, and he was connected to the plot. And he wasn't a central player, but he was directly involved. And so Rommel had some connections to the plotters, and he had been wounded already, so he's home. And I think many of you know the story, but the Gestapo shows up, and they tell Field Marshal Rommel that, Erwin, that's his first name, Rommel, if you're involved in this, and they tell him, if you take your own life, we will leave your family alone. And his son is named Manfred Rommel. Manfred Rommel goes on to become like mayor of Munich or mayor of Heidelberg or someplace. He goes on to a political life. So there's people that go, was Rommel involved? And from my reading, sure, I think he almost positively was. So he's part of the plot. And he takes his own life. And then he's given a state funeral, and he's considered to be a great hero. So this idea, when I'm listening to talk radio, when people were talking this way, I'm going, no, I mean, his own generals wanted to kill him. And Chuck Bonnewell and I were talking about this. These guys they were called the Junkers class, and they're Prussians, and and here's this little corporal and everything that goes with it. So they attempt to kill the Fuhrer. So I wish. It's like everything else, crack a book. take a look before. But I even listening to the network news, what they call it, corporate media, they didn't know. And I'm thinking, it's like, did George Bush ever read a book about Afghanistan before he did what he did? Of course not. All right, do a quick here. I'm happy to, and these guys are great, talking about our friends at Water Pros. Water Pros cares about the quality of your water. You can remove forever chemicals, microplastics, hard water. Water Pros, and we have one of these, and it's sweet. For $31.95, $3,195. So you know the number. You get a whole water softener. You get a point of use reverse osmosis drinking water system. It's all fully installed. Go to the process. Go to the Water Pros. This stuff is for health for you and your family. And what they'll do, Water Pros is family owned and veteran owned, and they're dedicated to providing you with the best in water treatment for less than the other guys. Let them come to your house and do this test. They come to your home, test your water, answer all of your questions and concerns about your water, show it to you. These are good guys. Water Pros are family owned, as I mentioned, veteran owned, dedicated to providing you with the best in water treatment for less than the other guys. And it's perpetual. And you have to change the salt. The salt is one of the filters. And we just changed the salt. Go to waterpros.net today and request your test. They will come to the family unit. 303-862-5554. That's 303-862-5554. And ask for, here it is, the Peter Boyles special. 303-862-5554. So now we're in open lines, and it's fair game. I'm talking about Halloween, politics, the assassination attempts, and I do want to come back and talk about election night. So get us out of here, Adam. We'll come back in just a second. Manfred Rommel was the mayor of Stuttgart. Thank you. About 1,100 listeners. You are right there. Manfred Rommel becomes the mayor of Stuttgart. Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday, October 26, 2024, 710 KNUS, Denver's talk station. I'm Peter Boyles, 75 and sunny today, and tomorrow 80 degrees. Now, coming up on election night. So we'll be here next Saturday, and then that Tuesday, of course, is election night. We'll go to the lines too. Lines are jammed. I have never hosted an election night, and I don't know why, but I just never have. So here we are, we're going to do one. And I have watched, as many of you have, so many election night returns. They're just awful. They're just terrible. And I'm sorry. I mean, I know that television cannot get down and dirty like talk radio can and will. So I went to the boss and I said, I propose this, and asking people to, number one, you turn on your TV. We'll probably start I know we're going to start at 6 o'clock. So turn on your television anytime, and then turn down the sound, and then turn on 710 KNUS. And you'll see the returns. We'll have the returns. But what a lineup we got. And Mike Rosen's coming out of retirement. Ted Trimble will host. Patricia Calhoun from Westward. I think and I hope Dr. June Depp will be back. Brother Jeff, Deborah Flora, Billy and Jeff, John Caldera. But the most important part of the night will be your calls and your input to the show. As I mentioned, nobody goes home early because I don't think there is an early night. So here we go. We will be on that Tuesday, and I'm really looking forward to it. All right, David waited forever, and he's on the show. David, good morning.
Oh, thanks, Peter. I could give you a ghost story if you want it, but I also was spurred by, you were talking about Hitler and the generals and who can you trust. If I remember right, Hitler his secret backers were the monarchists. The Kaiser wanted
and the industrialists.
Well, sure, yeah, but who had been working with the Kaiser for decades, if not century, and the idea that the monarchy was trying, Germany had finally kicked out their king, after World War I, and they had a brand new republic, and it was called the Weimar Republic.
The city was Weimar.
Right. And so the whole of Germany was basically free, like our 1776. Well, those kings wanted to come back. And it wasn't just the Kaiser that wanted to come back, but his cousin was the King of England, Edward VIII.
They were all cousins. They were all cousins.
Right. And they wanted their kingdom back, and they were going to they didn't want a republic to happen. And they allowed Hitler to get elected, and he was so stupid that he would ruin the reputation of a republic forever, and the people would beg to get the Kaiser back.
No, because the Kaiser flees to Holland, and he's in exile in Holland. He nodded in agreement to Adolf Hitler, but when the republic happens and takes place, and this is one of the fears of this country, it is in there. Remember, the Freikorps, the Spartacists. There's a civil war inside between the communists and returning veterans. The returning veterans they were called the Freikorps, the Freikorps, and on the other side of the Spartacists, and they fight. They have open pitch battles, and the republic then gets overwhelmed with inflation because they owe the world, because of what had happened at Versailles. They blamed the Germans for the war. The Kaiser's gone, and actually he passes away before any of this.
Peter, you got to realize that the Kaiser was the one that's caused the war.
No, he did not.
The Kaiser didn't want to. The Kaiser didn't want to pay the reparation, so they suckered they suckered the brand new republic into paying
No,
the Kaiser.
the Kaiser had fled into Holland way before Versailles, way before the reparations were implemented.
It was still passing the buck onto the brand new republic.
No, the Kaiser flees. Kaiser Bill is like a real interesting character, but he flees. And to put it in modern terms, now the Israelis now rocket the Iranians. And this is, if you read Barbara Tuchman, who's one of my favorite historians, particularly about this period of time, is the notion of the tripwire. And after the assassination of the Archduke, and it sets that in motion, that nobody can bring it back from. And the Kaiser, I'm not proclaiming the Kaiser as an innocent person, but having been a reader of all of that, the Kaiser had better laws, better rules for the working man. He started the kindergartens, the public schools. They had women's rights. If you were, and it's interesting what is to happen, but if you were Jewish, living with the Kaiser was much better than living with Clemenceau or other parts of Europe. So, but in the end, when the United States enters the war, and they enter the war on the side of the British, and the Kaiser is defeated. But it's the Kaiser thinking that he has an armistice, and what happens is the Kaiser is then blamed for the war, and it's the end it's the end of empire.
Have you ever studied the personality of the guy that got assassinated, Archduke Ferdinand?
Ferdinand, sure.
He was a real rat.
Well, he
would cause all sorts of diplomatic problems anywhere he went. He would cook women right in front of their husbands.
But he's a Habsburg. He's not a Hohenzollern. He's a Habsburg.
Well, either way,
no,
he was such a rake. He was such a useless character that there was no reason for a war to be started over his death.
No, and I agree.
He was like a third gambler.
But that's the tripwire, because the guy who shot him was Slavic. But remember, there's a bunch of total different families, and none of them actually, except for the British, survived the war. And they're Habsburgs, and the Kaiser is a Hohenzollern, and that they're separate families. In fact, the three of them.
They're both monarchists, right?
But Nicky Romanoff, the Kaiser, and the King of England are all first cousins. Their grandma is Victoria. Victoria is the queen. She's the grandmother of Europe. All three of them are related. They're not related. I mean, they intermarry with the Habsburgs, particularly the Kaiser, the Tsar. Nicholas Romanov marries one of these women. They speak German, but that's where the bleeder's disease, the Habsburgs bring in what makes the Tsar. Tsarevich is a hemophiliac, but they called it the Habsburgs disease. They spoke German in the court of the Tsar. They spoke German. They didn't speak Russian.
Well, what I was leading up to is, and when you were talking about the loyalty of the generals, many of the generals were loyal to the aristocracy, to the monarchy.
Yeah, well, not to the monarchy, but they were young.
If they were on Hitler's staff, they were still loyal to the monarchy.
No, remember, Hitler makes them take the oath to him.
Right.
My blood is my oath, and they're not taking the oath. It's one of the rubs right now that the military takes an oath to the Constitution, not to the president. In that case, Hitler said, "Take the oath to me," and it meant something. But
what Trump is trying to do now.
Well, if he's trying, I don't know what he's trying to do, but remember, these guys they're Junkers class. They're Prussians. Rommel isn't, but many of the general staff is, and they despise this corporal who's now running their show, and they had an allegiance, but I mean, look, the Kaiser is, I mean, he had a withered hand. He was macho. He built a fleet. Germans never had a navy. And they all thought whatever they thought. But in the end, there's no more Hohenzollerns. There's no more Romanovs. There's no more Habsburgs. And the British are hanging on by their fingertips. And that's it. There's no more.
The reason I brought this up, though, is it has to do with whether or not the generals were obeying, the ones that tried to kill him in the bunker and all, the various ones involving generals. If those generals were really loyal to the monarchy, or they were just, what was their motivation? If the Kaiser or the monarchists told them to obey.
End of war. Part of it in later parts, they wanted to end the war. Von Stauffenberg, they wanted to end the war. The only way they could end it was to end him. And remember, the war doesn't end until he shoots himself. So, but the other
if like the factories of the aristocracy were getting bombed, they want to end the war. So it's like there's a point of diminishing return working with Hitler.
And remember, they all survive. And that's like Volkswagens and Porsches and the Krupps and the Farbens. They all survived the war. They all, when it's said and done, those boys are still standing because the Allies need them. And
right. Now, so the allegations about, Hitler, whether or not Trump believes in Hitler, this issue, whether he's a fascist or whether whether he's a Nazi, this general that's been talking about him, if you look at the definition of the corporate state, it's where the corporations who are not alive run the world, and that the people don't have. In fascism, the people don't have a voice. The corporations have a voice.
Well, in fact, Hitler looks to Mussolini, and as does, there's another word called the Phalange. The Phalange are fascist, and that's Francisco Franco. When the one thing about fascism is it's a corporate state, and that's what I listen to people, and they'll say Trump's a Nazi and a fascist. No, stop. He's this and that.
Depends on the definition of
the definition is
end of fascism.
No. The definitions are definitions. Who the Nazis said they were, who the fascists said they were, who the Phalange said they were, who the Marxists, the Leninists, who they said they were. You got to go by how they define themselves. And I listened again to radio until I want to turn it off because they don't understand. I heard somebody call Harris a Marxist. No, she's not a Marxist. I mean,
it's taxation with representation.
Well,
he obeys what the people want, and if the people need health care, if the people need, the air cleaner.
No, but when you seize the means of production, which the Nazis never did, and Mussolini never did. But the Lenin,
they did. Hitler took over all of the means of production.
No, he did not. No, he did not. He did not. The Krupps, the Farbens, all these people, they kept their corporations before, during, and after the war. But
how about Fritz Thyssen? He was crowned Catholic. He was the first guy to give Hitler 5 million.
I know, I understand, but when and I got to end this when it's the Leninists, they seize the means of production, steel mills, coal mines, the things that
not in Germany.
No, I said the Leninists. There was no seizing of the means of production in either Germany or Italy, or for that matter, Japan.
I wonder if how like environmentalists are trying to get polluters to stop polluting.
You just changed horses.
Well, I'm wondering if that's called seizing the means of production.
No, seizing the means of production is what it means. That's what Karl Marx That's
right.
what
But if somebody's just trying to get them to stop belching smoke out through the smokestack, is that using the means of production?
No, it isn't. They're not. They want people to have EPAs. They want clean air. That has zero to do with what the
Project 2025.
Well, now you're jumping ahead of me again. What the Leninists did, what the Marxists did, what Stalin did. Stalin owned there's something economists call basic industry. Basic industry: steel, iron, coal, coke, that kind of stuff. Those are the building blocks of industry. Stalin had them. I got to jump. I appreciate it. 303-696-1971. We still good? We're all right? All right. We're take a break? Okay. So it's showtime at the den of the Golden Panther. It's like, no, you have to understand, and I'm not trying to be superior. I'm just saying, for God's sake, read about it. Karl Marx, it was that the workers of the world that he called the proletariat were going to seize the means of production. And at that point, and Lenin wrote a lengthy thesis on wages, prices, and value, and how they saw the world. And I don't think, God, I'm acting superior, but I don't think anybody read that stuff. And then they come on radio shows or wherever they're on television or podcasting, and they make these proclamations. And I grind my teeth. I said, haven't you studied what fascism is, or the phalange? Haven't you studied Nazism? Haven't you studied the Bolsheviks? Haven't you studied Marxism? All right, David Ellis is my guy. I saw David yesterday. You've heard me telling you to take your valuables to David Ellis Jewelry. Remember, holiday gift giving is coming up. And these valuables have tucked away in your home, and they're ready to go. Let me share other reasons to see David, just in case you don't have a Rolex or a rare coins or a silver tea set. See David Ellis for all your meaningful gift-giving occasions. David Ellis Jewelers has just the right item, just the right price for just the right special people. That means the most. Antique watches or emerald pendants, gold necklaces. Gold's way up, man. The price of gold is up. Diamond rings. A trusted jeweler has been buying precious metals and antiques in Colorado for decades. Dazzling cases filled with hundreds of new and used pieces for loved ones to treasure. Visit David Ellis Jewelers to see for yourself. Look for the black awning on the corner of 3rd and Clayton and Cherry Creek. Explore David Ellis Jewelry today, davidellisjewelry.com, or just call them. 303-322-8779, 303-322-8779, and tell them I sent you. 6 days a week. David Ellis is the man. He is there. Easy to find. 3rd and Clayton in Cherry Creek. We have a line open, 710 KNUS.
RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
$100 gift cards from Sean D's Persian Grill in the Denver Tech Center. Get them now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details.
This is Bach, but it always works out in a spooky movie or Halloween. Morning, everybody. It's the 26th of October. Halloween's Thursday night. We had fun this morning. 710 KNUS Weather Center weather, 75 tomorrow, 80, 82 on Monday. Halloween is, it says, partly cloudy, 53, 35 degrees that night. That was my favorite holiday because it was the gateway to other things. Let us go to Perry on line 3. You waited, Perry. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Yeah, my favorite composer, Bach, Toccata and Fugue in D minor.
You are absolutely right. Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, very good.
I don't know if I ever knew, or maybe I just forgot, Adolf had so many assassination attempts to him. I lost count. How many were bombings and how many were attempted shootings?
Well, there were
how many all total?
There were 6 legits, and they think that there was infinitely more, but bombing seemed to be the way to do it. Although there were a couple guys that had guns. The communist guy that was going to sneak up on him and shoot him. He got shot in the street, or he didn't get shot in the street. Goering got shot in the street in the putsch in November 21, I think was the putsch. And that's why Goering ended up with a morphine problem, because he was in such pain from being shot in the street. There was more than, how about this? There was more than one attempt to kill the guy.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if the most, if not all, the shooting attempts were in the 20s.
No.
Before he rose to power.
Well,
it would have been easier then.
I don't think so. I think because there's one in 43, I think, that guy tries to shoot him. And they catch him. But the rest of it was bombs. They put the bombs on a plane and von Stauffenberg plot. And so when I heard the kinds of things that I heard, I'm thinking, I think you got to, never mind. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. You just got to bite your tongue.
Yeah. No, it's true.
And grin. The one Halloween show you did, it wasn't really super scary, but it's just memorable. You remember it was towards the end, the Yak and the Yeti
absolutely.
restaurant?
That one was when a weird thing happened.
It was. It really was.
Yeah, no.
Some of your listeners stayed overnight, and then some came in the morning, and 2 women were sitting behind you, and there was an empty table in between you and them, and they said they saw the salt and pepper shakers move.
It was a glass, and I mean,
was it a glass?
I did not see it, so.
No, you had your back to it, yeah.
But everybody went a big noise and a hubbub, and this couple was there, and they're straights, they're civilians, and they said the water glass moved like a foot down the table. Now I didn't see it, but I take their word for it, and that was a big one.
Was there any stories as to who or what that might have been?
Yeah, there was a woman, and it wasn't always what it was. It had been some wealthy family's home, and there's always there's always a story.
Yeah.
And so that was a great night too. I mean, it was. I remember I went home from there that night. I was like sick and tired of sleeping on floors. And you're right. It was coming to an end. Yeah, it was coming to an end.
Yeah, I can't blame you there. So is Trump going to win this or what?
I go back and forth.
Me too.
After the debate, I thought she's got it. Then after they attempted to kill him, and he went to that convention, Hulk Hogan comes out. I thought, this guy's got it. And then he comes out and gives that address and he falls back into old Donald. And then they yank Joe Biden, and she shows up. I think no matter what, he had Biden hands down. Then here she comes.
Oh God, yeah.
Here she shows up, and she's not who they were planning on going up against. So she totally curveballs them. And then they have the debate, and she clips him in the debate. And then she starts appearing on different shows, and you start realizing,
reluctantly,
yes, but you start to realize, hey, there's not a lot home. So
isn't that a lot at home?
Yeah,
with her, you mean?
Yeah,
yeah. And I wrote to Trump on his website. I said, she doesn't want to do debates. Well, bring the debates to her. You know, bring the comments she made as senator and in the 2019. And she's now renounced or somehow changed her mind. And, you know, use a fake voice to ask her the questions again and again. And she doesn't want to tell you what she really thinks.
No, she has a unique ability not to answer a question. She really does.
Oh, yeah, but it's not good. I mean,
no,
so many politicians do that, but
it's an art form.
At it.
No, it's an art form of how not to answer a question. And I watched Anderson Cooper the other night with and
with her.
It was basically an infomercial. Now Trump didn't show up. Remember, Trump dogs it, but she goes on with
CNN.
On CNN. And
okay,
that's the thing about taking a fight, man. You got to take it no matter where they offer it. And so now
he takes far more than she does.
He's taken far more. Now he went on Joe Rogan.
Right.
He went on Joe Rogan. I haven't seen it, but Rogan.
No, I haven't either.
Rogan came out and said he was against Trump. Trump went on Rogan. They said for 3 hours. I have not. I love Joe Rogan. I haven't seen the interview, but he had the nuts to go on with Joe Rogan. So, you know, you tell me.
And what do you think of all these celebrity endorsements? Worth anything?
Of course. I mean, I said this, and now I heard other people say it. Sinatra and the Rat Pack put Jack Kennedy over, and there was no way Richard Nixon was going to come out and say, I hate Frank Sinatra. And Trump came out and said, I hate Taylor Swift. And then he turned around and said, I hate Bruce Springsteen. What do you get for that? I mean, what do you gain? Nothing.
Well, true. So did the Rat Pack campaign for Kennedy?
But the only one that didn't was Dean Martin. Dean Martin is quoted as saying, I want nothing to do with them Irish gangsters, meaning the Kennedy family. I'm serious. And
yeah, he's gonna stick with the Italians.
And also remember that Sammy Davis Jr. was going to did marry this white woman. Her name was, everybody thinks it was May. It was pronounced Mai Britt. She was Swedish. She was beautiful. And so he marries her. Sinatra's his best man. And Joe Kennedy, the ambassador, says you don't bring Sam around. You don't let him be at any of your events, because they were all, remember, the civil rights struggle was really in full bloom in the South. And I just got done reading. I didn't realize Eisenhower, he finally has a moment where he's allowing the black leaders to come into his office. It's like Philip Randolph and, all those legends from the time. And this young minister, Martin Luther King. Eisenhower does not like Martin Luther King. Later, he ends up sending the airborne into Little Rock, but he doesn't like Martin Luther King at all. And there's Philip Randolph, who they all knew was an old traditional guy, and I forget the other guys, but there was like 6 guys that went in to talk to him. And remember, the Kennedys were leery. No, the Kennedys were leery when Dr. King's in the Birmingham jail. And, they tell all these stories about the Kennedys, but they're being warned. Lyndon Johnson's warning them, don't you go in and get involved because you'll lose re-election. That's the South.
Yeah. I heard this morning, I've heard before, they call, the earliest time they called Republican Hitler was Truman and Dewey.
Yeah.
Truman called Dewey that.
Yeah.
In 48.
Yeah.
48. And of course they used it on Eisenhower too.
The thing,
so this is nothing new.
I think there should be a law. I really do. That
Yeah.
no, really, there's only one Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, I agree.
And every time you bring his name up and compare him to some other guy or anybody, you're not doing service to how this guy really was, and how many young Americans lose their lives getting rid of him.
It'd be a different story if every time the name's mentioned, people go out and read something about him.
Nah,
but they don't. They don't.
No.
So that sounds like that's going to be a great lineup you got there.
Yeah.
Election night. What time does it start?
6 o'clock. We have 6, and we'll go to. And I've told everybody that's involved, and I wrote it down on my worksheet. Nobody goes home early. I don't think they can. I mean, I even these amendments, and these are the important. We won't know on presidential probably till Saturday, but I mean, I think it's just going to be for me, coming to the end of the end, to sit with, having Rosen with me and Trimba and
that'll be cool.
It's going to be great. I had a good talk with Mike the other day, and Brother Jeff's coming, Deborah Flora, Jeff and Billy on Caldera. And it'll be great. I think it'll be a great night. And if everybody pulls it off, it'll, and people, now everybody's going to be drinking. Oh my God. I said that. We were talking. I was telling the boss, I said, guys home having a couple of pops watching the returns. About 10:30 decides he's going to call the show. Oh yeah. Stay on delay, man, because it's going to get good. Take care.
Oh God, I can't wait for that. It's going
to be a whale of a night. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, 303-696-1971. We have 2 lines open for the very first time. It's going to be 75. I got my motorcycle outside. Ride your sickle. I'll ride the sickle tomorrow too. And then I think it's getting to be that time that get your skis out, because the sickle time is gone. On election night, turn on your TV, then turn down the sound and turn on Radio Free Denver, good old 710, and we got returns. It's going to, like I said, I've never had the chance to do it before. Hey, 303-696-1971 of Peter Boyles. This is 710 KNUS.
RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
$100 gift cards from Sean D's Persian Grill in the Denver Tech Center. Get them now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details.
One of my true favorite tunes. Awoo! Warren Zevon. The Werewolves of London. And we knocked that off to Werewolf of Boulder. Back in the Ramses. Listen to this. I saw a werewolf. Hair was perfect. Kick it up. There you go. Dun, dun. This guy's unique character, man. I saw a werewolf in Soho. Oh, it's Saturday, everybody. Here he is. Happy Halloween. 710 KNUS, Denver's talk station. Good morning, everyone. We'll go to the phones. There's a line open. This is Gary. Gary, you're on a radio show. Good morning.
Oh, hi, Peter.
Hey.
I wanted to talk about the election. You know, I think most people are like me. They're kind of selfish and view things as how is this going to personally affect me? And I do think it's about the economy for me. You know, and for those reasons, I'm going to vote for Trump because I think his income redistribution plan is more favorable than Kamala's income redistribution plan. But in voting for Trump, I think I have to apologize to people like your daughter, your grandchildren, because I'm convinced, and if anybody's reading all the analysis that's been provided in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Trump's plan is going to blow up the deficit. It's going to cause an increase in inflation, and interest rates are going to go up. But I don't care about.
Tell me how you figure that. I'd never heard that.
Okay,
All
I'll go one by one. His plans on tariffs is going to cause inflation. Also, his plan to deport illegal immigrants is going to cause inflation because those are the individuals that work for very cheap costs, and if he exports all of those, prices are going to go up because the labor costs are going to go up. So that's what's going to happen on inflation.
Yeah, but is there a balance in this that public spending will also be decreased?
How's that?
Well, if you're taking care of a class of people on any and all levels, and I'm this is hypothetical, and you deport them, where do you come out? Remember, there was Jimmy Carter deported, Eisenhower deported. That's all happened before. Jimmy Carter rounded up the Iranians and put them out of the country. Nobody wants to talk about that, but Jimmy Carter did that, and he froze their money.
But was it as massive as what Trump is proposing?
No, it was not.
So anyway, labor costs will go up. Tariffs will cause increases. Also, as far as the deficit, you can just read about, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, no tax on firemen and policemen, no tax on this and that. That's going to create a deficit because our revenues are going to go down.
No, you have to cut, and he talks about it. You have to cut government spending. It's so important. And if you're going to do these things for working people, the tax issues, then if people respond to it, but one way or the other, this country cannot survive going into debt as we speak. The debt is now, well, how deep is the debt now?
And the only way you're going to be able to reduce the debt.
Your phone's breaking up. Your phone is breaking. I'm gonna jump. We'll go to Dean. There's a line open, 303-696-1971. Dean, you're up. You're on the show.
Well, I think you're right about Trump being able to handle the economy much better.
Yeah, it all depends. Remember, Congress is, where the action is, and the significance in how government works has been so overlooked. And
Are you familiar with supply side economics and Friedman?
Oh, sure, of course.
What does he say?
Well, remember, they're all Keynesians. They are. John Maynard Keynes, is the guy who their deficits, and supply side is what's the locomotive that drives it. And it's that idea of wants and needs. You may want it, but do you need it? Do you need it? That's different than a want. Does that make sense to you?
I think it's more simply supply and demand.
That's what I just said.
Drives the economy.
Yeah, of course.
The more supply there is, the price goes down.
Yes.
If you don't have supply, which is what has happened with Biden and Kamala, then you're going to get a restriction you got a restriction in supply, so demand goes up in every regard. But labor, foodstuffs, gasoline, particularly. But I just want to make one ending comment, and that is Kamala is a product of communist thought and well prepared to answer or to cover up. She's a cover up.
We'll go slow. Let me trade. She's a cover up for whom?
She's a cover up for communist ideology.
Oh, come on. I mean, how so? How so?
How so? What was her dad doing?
No, just come back. I don't want to talk about. I don't want to talk about my dad. I want to tell him you want to. I've heard like she's everything. She's a fascist. She's a Marxist. She's this. She's that.
She's a Marxist.
Huh?
Because her dad was a Marxist.
Well, my dad worked at a steel mill. I work in radio. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. And plus her mother,
Stalin and
her mother and father split up. I mean, you probably know that.
Peter.
Yes.
Yeah, they did, and relatively shortly. But I think she's a product of that.
Well, you can.
Peter, look at Stalin. Look at Stalin and Brezhnev and Lenin and all these guys.
That's a Dean.
The public.
Dean, that's a
They didn't provide themselves to the public.
Dean, you just did a quantum leap. You went to Stalin from Harris.
No, I think that all of the Russian dictators they all covered up to the public. They controlled the radio.
Of course they did.
They didn't have Peter Boyle on there for sure.
No, but so did the Fuhrer. So, I mean, lots of people, the British, the whole British system until they started breaking away was the BBC that was government owned and operated. The United States of America was the first place where the independent broadcasting took place. We didn't have state-run radio. We didn't have state-run newspapers. The most of the world had the government owned the means of communication. If you look in the third world, whenever there's a revolution in the third world, what's the first thing they seize? The radio station.
Yeah, they take them out.
Sure. Now, if she's, I don't know, but I've heard it, and it just kind of makes my teeth grind. These are terms that get thrown around. And unless she starts talking about seizing the means of production.
No, she's not going to say that, Peter.
Well, that's communism.
That's too bland. She's not going to say that publicly.
Well, that's communism.
Get over it.
I'm not getting over it. You're the one that said it.
No, I mean, getting over the idea that they're carte blanche. She's not answering questions.
I understand that.
She's
but
hiding herself. She's hiding herself.
Doesn't make her a commie.
Oh, it does when her
for you,
real true
for you, it does.
Look how she voted.
Look
how she voted.
They're not communists. I mean, I'm not a defender of anyone here, but that ain't.
No, I know.
There were communists in, and there still are in this country.
Sure.
They're Marxists. They're They're very, 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 very few of them are even Leninist. And there's a huge. I got to take a break. We'll come back and play that game. Thank you so much. All right, we got to do a turn. 710 KNUS. I'm Peter Boyles, Denver's talk station. There's a line open. Dan Kaplan's law firm. Danny's my guy. When you're going to choose a lawyer who shares your valuables, it's Danny, because you choose to represent. And when you choose your lawyer, it says so much about you. Injury cases, I for real. I mean, capless. We had some stuff in our family, and I'll tell you a story. I mean, it would be 9:00 at night, and Danny would call to make sure things were good. His dad's a cop. We've talked about growing up. He's my guy. The only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan's believed to be the only one that won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Capless Law. He's now with the Nuggets and the Avs, and serious firm for serious cases, man. I mean, you got a problem. 303-770-5551. 303-770-5551. Or hit Dan Kaplis Law. Danny's last name is spelled Caplis. You couldn't ask for a better friend. Dan Kaplis Law. Good afternoon, everybody. We just crossed 12 o'clock. 7:10, KNUS Halloween weekend. 75 will be the high. 80 on Sunday, Monday, 82 degrees. Again, special thanks to Scott Hastings and Kenny Dhainin and Darrell Luebbe. That was wonderful. The Jeff and Bill World Tour at the IHOP. And Jeff and Bill, the World Tour, coming to the IHOP in Aurora. Join them for a live breakfast broadcast on Tuesday morning from 6 until 10 at the IHOP, located in Mississippi Avenue, west of 225. Say hi, be part of the show. There's the boys. Coming up on election night, I get to do, for the first time in the much storied career, I get to anchor election returns. And I think it's going to be a fun night, and it'll be emotional for a lot of folks. So here's how I think this can work. Turn on your television and then turn down the sound and turn us on 710 KNUS. And hopefully I've put together just a really great bunch of very smart people. We'll take your calls. They'll talk to each other, your calls and your inputs. It'll be just, I think, a wonderful night. Mike Rosen's coming out of retirement. Ted Trimble will be with me in studio. Patricia Calhoun. Hopefully Dr. June Depp's back. Brother Jeff, Deborah Flora, Jeff and Bailey, Caldera, and so many more. So it's going to be a great night, and nobody goes home early. I just want to take a second, and then we'll go back to the phones. This notion of communism or being a commie. And like I said, I saw the Weak Sticks this week talking about Hitler's generals without realizing Hitler's generals tried to kill Hitler. And we've chronicled it today. We can do it again, but it takes time. So here's Karl Marx. And I mean, I've read Karl Marx extensively, undergrad and grad school. And the history of the world walks with Karl Marx. And Karl Marx is the first historian, which he really principally was a historian, who puts a locomotive on history. He takes it from Hegel, the idea of a thesis, antithesis, the clash, and what happens next. But Marx actually puts a locomotive on history, what gets pulled into tomorrow. So he and Engels are, and more him, Engels is sort of his financier. Engels' father was wealthy. And he's writing about the beginning in the center part of the Industrial Revolution. He's writing about Germany. He's writing about England. And he sees what's taking place. In the meantime, there is also rising people called utopians. Saint-Simon, Fortier. I mentioned before, there's been utopian colonies in the United States, the Amana colony, early Quakers. But so Marx is writing, and Marx has this inevitability of something that's going to happen, that he does show classes, and classes certainly exist. But these people that he calls the proletariat, they are eventually going to seize the means of production. And the state will wither away. Remember, we did the whole John Lennon Imagine. And the state will wither away, and the power will go into the hands of the workers. And he eliminates the bourgeoisie. He eliminates the ruling class, and workers will own it. Well, people went along reading that. But then comes the Leninists, the Bolsheviks. Now, they are a vanguard party. And this is what's important. Lenin looks at it and says, we can wait for Karl Marx to happen, or we can make Karl Marx happen. We can make the revolution happen. Remember, Marx sees this as evolutionary. He sees it as inevitable that the workers will finally have enough. And as they move up, and that's why people destroyed unions. The unions scared these people because they thought, oh my God. But then comes Karl, after, they all read Marx, they all read Lenin, they read these other people. And here's Lenin, here's, the rest of the crew. And they say, we can make this happen. We can kick the revolution over. We can start it. We can make it happen. We are the vanguard. And so the First World War is on. The Tsar is You can't explain Nicholas Romanov to anybody, but that's the place. But before that happens, there's a group of people called the Mensheviks. The Mensheviks are the ones who move in, and they take down the Tsar. But the problem with the Mensheviks, and there's a guy named Alexander Kerensky, and the problem with the Mensheviks is they won't get out of the war. And the war is brutal, and it's draining, and it's murdering. And the German imperial staff finds Vladimir, and they put him in a train along with his wife and a lot of his followers, and they seal them in. They're so afraid of them. There's a wonderful book entitled To the Finland Station. And I actually went to the Finland station. I actually saw the train. And they send Lenin and his Bolsheviks into what now is back to being Leningrad, but it became, back to being Petersburg, but at one time it becomes Leningrad. They get off the train and they overthrow the Mensheviks. And they say bread is their number one. People are starving, and they're going to end the war. Trotsky is with them, and Trotsky ends up going to a place called Brest-Litovsk, and he negotiates his way out of the war, taking the Russians out of the war. And it's a really interesting story. The first time Trotsky goes, he just grabs a whole bunch of people thinking these are the workers, they're brilliant, and they can go negotiate with the German general staff. They came back a second time, but they end the war, and they promise land and they promise bread. And that's when the revolution really gets underway. Now, that's where they have to go. There's a place called Ekaterinburg. There's a civil war. They're called the Whites and the Reds. They have to murder the Tsar. But Lenin is important. Lenin is very important because they take Marx and they activate Marx. They overthrow the Mensheviks. Much later comes this Chinese guy by the name of Mao. And all the traditional Bolsheviks, Stalin, of course, they're agrarians. You can't do this. You're not industrial. And as a matter of fact, the traditional Marxists looked at what the Bolsheviks were doing and saying there was industrial. Obviously, Leningrad was industrialized, but by and large, Russia was agrarian and behind. But they begin. This is one of the things that Stalin does and Khrushchev will do. And they seize the means of production. They start building dams and they start doing all these things. And so now here comes Mao. And Mao's going to pull it off, a total agrarian revolution. The traditional Marxist, or now call them Bolsheviks, whatever you want to call it, they look down their nose. They go, you can't do it. You need an industrial base to have workers to do these things. Mao does it. That sets the whole world on its ear. Ho Chi Minh, all these different people in sub-Saharan Africa, Central America, they get radicalized, and they too become Bolsheviks. But they're Marxists, but it's one to another to another. Now, when I hear people talk on radio or wherever they appear, and they start talking about Marxists, they don't have a clue. I mean, I watch them, I listen to them. I said, have you ever read Das Kapital? Have you ever read the Manifesto? Have you ever read Lenin? Have you ever read Trotsky? Have you ever read Buchanan? Have you ever read these people? Well, I don't know who they are. Now, there is this appeal that you were not going to live under the thumb of the colonialist. And the whole thing comes apart. After the Second World War, particularly in places like sub-Saharan Africa and Africa, where these people went off and they fought for the British, they fought for the French, and they came back, to have the French or the British, or in some cases, tragically us, take our foot and put it on the backs of their necks and don't let them stand. Now it starts again. Starts with the French in Southeast Asia. I mean, you go down a list of places that Algeria, the British in Kenya. I mean, the list of the Belgian, it just goes on. And now we have it again. And so when I hear that Marxist tag, the real, they're first of all, they're Leninists. I mean, Karl Marx just writes the books. And his idea of when the revolution will come is when the remember, arise, workers of the world. You have nothing to lose but your chains. He wasn't talking about anybody leading these revolutions. He thought that would be, in a way, that it would be evolutionary, that it would just rise and become. And that's where, the union movement begins, all the things that happen. But the utopians have been there. And of course, Marx, although not a utopian, is writes these how the world is. And after the First World War, then the real fear begins, because all the crown heads of Europe, except for the Brits, they're gone. The Romanovs are gone. The Habsburgs are gone. The Hohenzollerns are gone. Fills this big power vacuum. Into that walks the Fuhrer. Into that walks Mussolini. Into that walks the Phalangists, the Franco people. I mean, and it's all going on like in an amalgam. And then comes the war. After the war is over, Winston Churchill's trying to hang on to the empire. That isn't going to happen. The United States becomes a world power. But you have to understand what Karl Marx is talking about and what the Bolsheviks do. And they pick the one place they can pull it off, Russia, with the one person. That's if you think of really just despotic human beings, not because he's a bad person, just because he's a dope, Nicky Romanoff. All right. Does that make any sense? Probably not. All right. We start with Joe. Joe, you're on a radio show. Good afternoon.
Hey, Peter. Man, I should have been taking notes during that. That was quite the quite the diatribe. But I have to say, yeah, I was commenting on Kamala. But yeah, I mean, people throw out, fascists.
It's just sad.
And Nazis, and they have it's just it's a lazy excuse to say they don't agree with someone or they don't like them or whatever.
But they don't understand what they're saying.
Oh, of course not. Just like these college students, protesting Israel against Hamas. I mean, my God, those extremist Hamas. I mean, my God, women have no rights over there. If you're gay, you're thrown off a building. But they're all behind that. It's just ridiculous.
But again, that's something. That's one of those places, and I think it was Toynbee. Somebody said, and I've used this too many times. There are parts of the world, places in the world, where there is no tomorrow. It's simply yesterday repeating itself. And now sometimes I think Netanyahu said, that's enough. We're going to end this. But, and there's going to get down to things like what's going to happen in Michigan with a heavy Arab population when it comes to the vote. You think they're going to go for her? No, I don't.
That's funny because that's where I'm from originally. Yeah, no, I think, anyways, I wanted to mainly comment on Kamala because, the more she is exposed, they're kind of tried to sort of hide her much the way they did Biden. The more she goes public, whether it's an interview or off teleprompter, she cannot think on her feet. 2 weeks ago or whatever, she was at a rally or whatever, and a teleprompter went down. She is. Yeah, I'm sorry. She's a dingbat. Look, I'm gonna vote. I'm gonna vote for Trump, but I mean, Kamala Harris is just. She is just a dingbat.
Remember, and I don't think she's a dingbat, but remember, she's the accidental tourist, and that's important. That she never went through a primary process, and she just she was anointed. But they didn't.
Because
Go ahead.
The Democrats could not dump her because She was a so-called woman of color, a woman and a woman of color. There's no way they could have dumped her because she is proving herself to be okay. So maybe Dingback's a little strong.
But here you have to be careful because
she is not any kind of a leader or any kind of a person that can stand on her own 2 feet.
But remember, I mean, this really predicates on Joe Biden. I personally believe that the Democrat power structure called for that early Trump debate. They're test driving him. They put him out there. He looks like a fool. Then he goes to NATO and he looks like a fool. Then he comes back to that press conference. He looks like a bigger fool. So I do believe it was what you call a palace coup. And I think it was Biden's. I think it was Obama. I think it was, I don't think she's part of it. And I think they go to Delaware. They go to the beach house and they go, Joe, it's time. Like they did to Nixon. You got to step down. Now, here she comes, and the Trumps never saw her. The Trumps never saw her. And now she's in the game. So I don't know what the outcome is. I think I hate people that predict elections, but I don't know. I don't know the outcome.
I got one question for you, Peter.
Sure.
So I think to anyone that's, honest and rational, it was obvious, back in 20 that Biden was slipping, and it's obviously become far more obvious. So behind the scenes, who's pulling the strings?
I hear that
it is not Biden. It cannot be Biden.
I am
the man is my dad, I lost my dad to Alzheimer's, and I see Biden talk and his behavior, and I see so many similarities.
I am currently reading Bob Woodward's book War. And it's not about Trump. People think it is. It has Trump in it, but it's about Joe Biden and Putin, the war in Ukraine, Joe Biden, and the war in the Middle East. And it's a terrific book. I mean, I love Woodward and what he's done. But there's moments where Joe Biden, according to the book, and nobody's suing anybody. So there's moments that Joe Biden understands it, but in a greater sense, when they get into dealing with the Finns and all these people that may or may not come into NATO, they understand that Joe Biden doesn't understand Putin at all. And
can I ask you something?
Sure.
Are you familiar with what Robert Gates said about Joe Biden?
Oh, yeah. Sure. I mean,
he's been, and it's true. It's true.
But here comes the same thing. You familiar with all the people that say things about Donald Trump?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So how many, Rosen and I, because he's going to be with us, Rosen and I were having this conversation, and Mike said, Trump fired every one of them. Do you expect them to say something nice? Which I thought was an interesting comment from Mike. So, that night, here's a question for you. You're very good at this. How many days will go by before we know who the president will be?
Man, I hope not a lot.
But what do you think?
I'm hoping not more than 2 days. I mean, I hope they clean, but I said I'm hoping.
I know. I heard that. Yeah. A week?
But it's just ridiculous.
A week?
Man, I hope not.
Okay.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, and I'm not saying he did not win, but there was definitely a lot of major discrepancies last election round.
Sure
there was.
That's that record. No, but
that's water under the bridge. That's water under the bridge.
We'll see. That's why.
But look at how many Democrats are kind of jumping ship. Are you familiar with Bezos, who owns the Washington Post?
Yeah, sure.
He put the kibosh on his editorial team to not endorse Kamala. Whether you like him or not, there's no question that the previous this administration, things across the board are worse.
Well,
would Ukraine have happened would October 7th have happened if Trump was in office?
Yeah, I mean, that was the point of it was the lies that Putin was telling, moving up troops, and they really thought that they were going to walk over the Ukrainians, and they did not. And Joe was at odds with what do we do, and the people who made the money and continue to make the money is the industrial complex. They're sending they're sending so much weaponry into Ukraine that you and I pay for that
big money.
But back to these things where there's 18 Republican congressmen who say they're not going to back Trump. That's why this thing is down to the wire. I mean,
it is. It is. Oh, absolutely.
Good call. Thanks, man.
But can I add one thing?
Of
when
course.
We're talking about Russian and Ukraine.
Okay.
I did not know this. This is how bad the Russians/Soviets and Putin are. I found this out when they first invaded Ukraine. You know, I'm just like you. I'm kind of a history and current news thing. The Russian army, when they send people to war, they have mobile incinerators, or whatever you want to call them. So when their soldiers are killed,
they burn them.
How sick is that?
Well,
that's the kind of people you're dealing with.
But you think that they think like you think, and
oh my God, it's disgusting.
The Russians, Soviets won the Second World War in Europe. It's, the United States plays a role. The United States of America wins the war against the Japanese. But boy, you read that stuff about the Russian army, the Red Army, and then Putin's father and his uncles, and they're all involved in it. And his uncles, they never find them. I read his life, and it's pretty amazing. And
they won through attrition because they had so many people.
Well, that's how
they could afford to lose thousands and thousands of casualties.
Point of it is they won that war, and
I have to disagree. They would not have won it without us.
How?
We supplied them with plenty. We
gave them weaponry, and we gave them airplanes, and we gave them boots and all these kinds of things. But overwhelmingly, when you read the Soviets, when the first American goes ashore in D-Day, the 3/4 of the Nazi army, the Wehrmacht, is on the Eastern Front fighting Russians.
Right.
And it wasn't there. I mean, they had the Panzer units and everything, but no, it was and I think that they were, I don't know how many miles from Berlin they were when America, and taking nothing away from the brave men and women of the United States and Great Britain and France, but it was the Soviets, and they took the blunt of the war. Now we beat the Japanese, but they beat the Germans.
Damn right, I'm a Marine. Yeah, you're right, but and that's where we can probably be thankful historically that Hitler was enough of a fool that he went against Russia, because if it were not for that, it would have been tough.
He believed that they would fall apart, and they did. And then Stalin
initially,
Stalin rallies everybody. It is so complex.
It was a war of attrition because, like I said, Russia had so many people. If you ever seen that movie, Enemy at the Gates, which I believe is fairly accurate.
Oh, totally accurate. Totally accurate.
Yeah, the Russians threw guys in without even weapons, and they would wait until someone behind them fell, and then they would grab their weapon.
And
I mean, that's how.
The Chinese.
Like I said, that was
the PRC did that in Korea. You go behind that guy, he goes down, you pick up, and that's called the Rattenkrieg, the war rats, and you can't. I'd say I can't begin to fathom Stalingrad. And I was in Leningrad. I went to the Heights, and I went into those museums, and you can't begin to fathom what that must have been like.
The loss of life. Yeah, the loss of life.
It was like, when Khrushchev runs the war in Stalingrad. He gets there, and the suicides begin. We're talking about the generals and what people never understood. But even in the end, Hitler is alleged to have said, "I should have treated my generals like Stalin did." Talk to you.
Wow.
Thanks. All right. Here we go. Black Eyed Pea. Locally owned, locally operated by Steve and Michelle. These are friends. I love these restaurants. It's home-style cooking worth going out for. There's 8 locations, so there's obviously one near you. When's the last time you took the family unit to eat at the Black Eyed Pea? They got the daily specials, the senior discounts. Check out the new menu items, the stuffed spuds, 8 different delicious baked potatoes, chopped steak spuds. Dude, sweet pork spuds, meatloaf stuffed spuds, broccoli cheese stuffed spuds, and a lot more. This is big time. Everybody in the party's sure to find a favorite. Make your dinner party, rehearsal dinner, wedding reception, company event a success with the Black Eyed Pea catering. No matter what the occasion, the Black Eyed Pea gift cards are always great. So whether you purchase them for your spouse, their birthday favors, their holiday presents, they got you covered. I love everything about these restaurants. I know you will as well. Keep it here in Colorado and visit our friends at the Black Eyed Peas.
RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
$100 gift cards from Sean D's Persian Grill in the Denver Tech Center. Get them now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details.
Halloween. Good music. Adam Walker's got the con. Good afternoon. It's Saturday, October 26, 2024. Good old 710 KNUS. The boys are on the street. Jeff and Billy go to Aurora IHOP this Tuesday. And then don't forget, following Tuesday night, I get to do the returns of the election with a lineup and a crew. It's going to be great stuff. In open lines, we continue. Let's go back to the phones. I'm watching the wire here. We'll go to Bob. Bob waited the longest. Bob, hi. You're on the show. Good afternoon.
Yeah, hi, Peter. I was wondering if you saw that movie based on the Silent Brotherhood book is coming out in early December.
I know that it's coming, and they bought Kevin Flynn and Gary Gerhardt's book. And I know that much, and Kevin has had a look at the script, but I know the film is coming.
Well, it's I saw it on the internet, and then I checked it some more before I called, and it's due to be released December 5th, and it's going to be on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
And when I heard you talking to the producers and directors of the movie several months ago, it sounded like their plans were kind of vague, but it's actually coming to fruition. And got an actor, Mark McCrone, who's playing Alan Berg, so that's going to be in the movie. And then this Jude Law guy, the star, plays an FBI agent that I guess tracks him down. But
there's what I understand about the film, and I obviously haven't seen it or anything like that. They make it a clash between the FBI agent and not Bruce Pierce, but Robert Matthews, and I don't know, and I'm not trying to attempt to know, but I don't know if there was an FBI agent up there that did what this film, what I've been told this film does. They catch them that's not how they caught them. And it wasn't, now maybe this guy was on to them, I don't know. But they get caught, the ways they get caught aren't because one individual FBI agent tracks them down. That isn't how it happened. It happened, a lot of it was the weapon that was dropped in the armored car robbery in Ukiah, California. The other one is that fill in the blank that was their counterfeiter that lived in Philly, and they grabbed him and he gave them up. A lot of ways, but in fairness, obviously, let's watch it and let's see what they do with it.
Yeah, I did read the book after I heard your show with the producers, and then the Alan Berg anniversary assassination show that you had. And I had the book around my house for a couple of decades, and because Kevin Flynn gave a copy of it to my wife.
There you go.
And so I pulled it and read it, and I was surprised at how detailed it was.
Very much so.
And I guess I got a lot of that from court transcripts and everything. And Kevin was a reporter for the Rocky Mountain News, and
yes, he was. Kevin,
attended a lot of the trials.
Where Kevin and I bonded, because I love Kevin. The first trial was in Seattle, and it was a RICO, and I got a subpoena to go to the RICO trial to be a witness, and I went there with Kevin, and then we had to wait. I'm trying to remember 3 days, I think, before I was called in to testify, and Kevin was there, and we just hung out. They went there. There were feds and people were watching us and everything, but and I just kind of hung out with Kevin, and I learned a lot from Kevin. I think he and Gary Gerhardt, who has now passed away, but then there's Alan Pendergast, and he's Alan Pendergast and Kevin are the two chronicles of that horrible event or events. And like I said, I wrote that piece for the Post that was the true, I believe, the true chronicle of what happened. And of course, like Kevin said, once he sells the book, it ain't his anymore. They can do what they want to do with it.
Yeah. Well, the book was very, very detailed. And like you said, I mean, I don't remember the book focusing on any, FBI agent that tracked him down. But I mean, the FBI was involved in the final capture of that.
You bet they, yes, they were. And they when it comes down to Bob Matthews and Gary Lee Yarborough when they jump out the window, and this is the end of it, Gary Lee breaks I think he broke his ankle, and he couldn't run, and he tells Matthews to run. Now Matthews he's the head of it, and Matthews goes to that Whibley Island and at home. They have the standoff, and they burn the place, and Matthews dies in the fire. They got Gary Lee, but it's catching the other guys because they had totally split up. And the last guy that they caught was Richard Scutari. And Richard Scutari was working, I believe,
he was the shooter, wasn't he?
Wasn't he the shooter? The shooter was Bruce Pierce. They argued about who was going to pull the trigger and kill him. And Matthews and Pierce argued. And Pierce was trying to usurp Matthews's power inside this group of crazies. And he somehow wins the right to take Alan's life. So he's behind the tree, and in the car is Richard Scutari, David Lane's behind the wheel, Robert Matthews, and Bruce. They wait, and there's a bunch of big trees on Adams Street, and he gets behind the tree, and Alan pulls into the driveway and gets out with a bag of dog food, and that's it. So
yeah, well, we'll see how the movie portrays it. And,
I've been
certainly
told
the movie's going to end with a big bang, with the way Matthews went out.
He burns, but the trials were, and I was in 2 of the trials, and the trials were real. The RICO trial was really, because there was every one of them, and by that time I'd never seen them before, but I knew who they were. I knew their history. I knew their names, and Scutari's still on the run. They don't catch Scutari, but and Matthews is dead. Matthews burns. But there was, there were so many of those other guys, Randall Dewey and all those characters that had nothing to do with killing Alan, but they did all the other crimes. And so I forget, there was a semicircle of those guys. And some of them, I knew who they were by name, but I didn't know what they looked like. The other guys, I knew what they looked like. And I remember walking in there and seeing them.
The whole order does have some relevance today with the rise of
you bet.
Supremacy.
You bet.
But I guess those guys were very militant, and then they, robbed the banks and the armored cars in order to
the armored car.
So
they hit the armored car in a place called Ukiah, California.
Yeah, so they were criminals and they were militants. So that was
some of that money,
kind of unique.
Some of that money has never been recovered. And there's all these different theories about where the money went. Some of it people believe maybe still buried with weapons up in the Northwest. Some of it they believe they gave as talent grants to. There was a guy named Lou Beam. He was the head of the Klan in Texas, and they were trying to burn these Vietnamese shrimpers, and he got some of the money. And I don't know. There's so many yet unknowns, and maybe you'll never know, but they got a ton of money out of that. And that's where they bought the house on Whibley Island with that money. So that's, there
were a lot of facets to it.
Oh man. Sure. Oh man.
And on the election, from what I see with the polls, it's neck and neck at like 47% for each of them. So
I agree.
going to be close. It may be the closest one yet. So
I agree. I agree again. Thank you, man. Very good call. Thank you so much. Everybody stay here, 710 KNUS.
RockyMountainBargains.com, where you'll always pay half price. Why pay retail when you can get what you want at 50% off? Just go to RockyMountainBargains.com and save. Here's this week's featured item.
$100 gift cards from Sean D's Persian Grill in the Denver Tech Center. Get them now for half price.
Get it now at RockyMountainBargains.com for 50% off. RockyMountainBargains.com, where you always pay half price. Restrictions apply. Go to RockyMountainBargains.com for complete details.
Gene Simmons. Remember this song? Knew I moved into a haunted house. Woo! It is Saturday afternoon. I'm sorry, everyone. October 26, 2024, 710 KNUS. It's been a great show. Thank you to Scotty Hastings and Kenny Dhainin and Darrell Luebbe. The calls are great. Don't forget, we will do election night returns with a lineup of stars. And also don't forget the boys, Jeff and Billy, the World Tour and the Aurora IHOP. They do that on Tuesday morning. All right, start to wrap this puppy up. Mike, you're on the show. Good afternoon.
Hi, Pete.
Hey, man.
I called you last week as a retired cop, and I just want to talk about crime real quick. I deliver parts as a retired cop, and I talked to a guy yesterday whose wife is from Venezuela. So this story comes through her. She's got a brother who's still living there in Caracas, and he asked her, said, "How's it going up there for you in Denver?" And she said, "Not good." And he said, "Well, it's going great here." He said, "The streets are clean, no crime, our jails are clear, and we got nothing." He said, it's all up there. And, again, this is no hype. This is no political stuff. I mean, this is just from somebody living there. So no political hype, no 9 News, and nothing. And I just think people, Jeff and Bill were asking yesterday, Bill was saying, well, why aren't they saying anything? Why aren't they doing anything? And I, wanted to call Billy off the air and say, Billy, they can't, because Polis and all these people can't say the truth that let these people hear.
No, I agree.
And regardless of who wins, I talked to my brother this morning, big Camilla supporter, and I said, Donald, I don't care. His name's Donald. I said, I don't care who wins, Donald. These people are here. And I said, this big lie of her getting elected, okay, elect her. Because if because he said, why'd you vote for Trump? I said, because he's the only one, I believe, of the two that's going to try to put a stop to this, regardless of whatever names you want to call him or whatever. These people are here. And I talked to you last week. This is unlike anything we're seeing. And these people, they, like Danielle Durinsky, talking to these people, they are not letting the cops be the cops. And with the 2 police chiefs that quit in Aurora, they quit because they are, I believe, good people, and they cannot tolerate this. And for the life of me, I'd like to ask, why won't you let the cops be the cops and protect these people? These migrants, I spent my life working in Denver protecting these people of color. We're not the bad guys. We will protect these people, regardless of their status. I mean, let us be the cops. We're not Bull Connor. We're not the people that are going to oppress these people. I mean, they're here. Regardless.
You must destroy, this is the part of it. You must destroy the infrastructure that holds it together and to enable the other things to happen. No, your point's legitimate and well taken. I mean, I have witnessed it myself, and I wish I'd have got you early. Mike, I'm under a minute. Next week.
Yeah, I know. I told him I'd be concise, and I'm just saying.
No, you are. You're doing great.
It's just, wake up, people, because regardless, and I know the economy's bad, whatever. These people are evil beyond anything I ever saw in 30 years as a Denver.
Call me next week. All right, everybody, have a great Halloween, and don't forget the boys are out Tuesday, and then don't forget on election night, it's going to be great. There's going to be a cast of thousands and a cost of millions. Adam Walker, thank you. Patrice, get ready. All's right in the world. 75 the high. I'll see you.